It's Friday, August 30th, 2024. Recording, right? I guess I should have asked that before. Right.
There we go.
Well, there we go can mean a lot of things in the context of stuff that we, that could mean just shit
listen,
the bed.
if it wasn't working, I'd say something like, it fucking exploded.
Yeah, well, it's... I have failed to notice that, not in a long time, but it's not like I've never failed to notice that the record thing wasn't actually running when I was sure I hit the button. So you can think things are working, and then you can find out they don't. So anyway.
Yeah. Words to live
Let's
by.
start off with our what the hell word was I going to use?
Support.
No, I know that's what it was, but I like to preface it by saying it's our recurring. Let's start off with our recurring opening segment, which of course where we tell you that you can support our show very simply by going to supportourshow.com, and you will find that every method of supporting the show that is currently available is now there. So click that. Oh, yeah, there is a link. In the comments on every show as well is that link. So if for some reason at the end of the show you remember, oh, what was it? Don't worry. You don't have to back up. Just look in your little metadata tags and you will see that the comments for every one of the main Friday shows has the link there. So I include that so that people don't have to remember anything, because when we're talking for 3 hours, I don't remember what we said at the beginning either. So I'm not going to really expect you to. So, no, seriously, I don't.
The funny thing is, we never intend for them to be long either. That's the joke of it.
No.
Is that we always kind of go in expecting it would be done like an hour and walk away, and then,
I feel bad because after we record, my wife will say to me, what did you guys talk about? And I almost never can remember the first 30 to 40 minutes.
That's because it's usually my weird shit. That's why.
Or it's random stuff that we're like, that we wander off into.
We pinball through the beginning, yeah.
So I'll say, I've literally said, I think Lando talked about something, then I talked about something, and then I did a movie review. And then we were done. It's not me being mysterious or enigmatic or, withholding. It's just I don't remember. Because
listen, there's times I don't remember while we're talking. So, I mean.
Well, part of it is, honestly, because in the early days of the show, we had topic lists, and so we had something to refer to. It was much easier to say, well, no, that we were figuring out the
we talked about
DNA.
X-Men today. We talked about this.
Well, or
today.
when we did the Desert Island bookshelf, stuff like that. I remember that one because that was like a good idea. It's like, oh, okay, what's your Desert Island bookshelf? Like, that's a neat idea. So it's easier to say, oh, we each picked 10 books that if we were stuck on a desert island, we would want to have with us. Well, that's an easy concept to not only explain, but then have somebody go, oh, yeah, that's a neat idea. I wonder what I would take. Like, that's what it used to be. Now it's just more of a stream of consciousness, garbage diarrhea from our foreheads. It's nothing. So, I mean, it is. I'm sorry, it's what it is.
You should cut that, and that should be the advertisement for the show.
That's the subtitle? Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
What's your show about? Well, it's...
it's a stream of conscious diarrhea from our foreheads, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it's not inaccurate. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a wide history to bear that out.
Yeah, yeah.
But...
Somebody enjoys it.
About that? Where did that even come? See, that's what I mean. Where did that come from? I don't remember.
Because we were talking about what the hell the show's about, and your wife asking you what the hell we talked about.
Yeah, but what led to that?
Oh, to
Yeah.
Oh, because we
see?
take that we take so long.
Oh,
and
right.
the metadata.
Right. Oh,
and the
right.
metadata for
Yes.
what happens
So
in the
that's
beginning
why
towards the end,
why I put the link in the comments so that if somebody remembers at the very end and doesn't want to back up, because it's not always like I necessarily even say it in the first 5 minutes. There's been times where I've gone 15 minutes before we ever get to that part. So to make sure that if you need it, it's there. It's always in the comments for the Friday show. Very simple, because that particular section in my process is always empty, and I abhor a vacuum in my metadata tags, so I put it right there. So that's where it goes. Yeah. Because the title is the title. The artist is always the same. Well, not always the same. If there's a guest host, it changes. The album title is the show name. The year is always the year. And then the comments is always empty, because there's really just nothing to put there. Unless I was going to put a comment myself like, this show sucked. I've thought about doing that as a joke a couple of times. I've thought of putting something in there, of taking a note of the weirdest thing that comes up in the show and then putting it in the comments. Didn't think we'd be talking about erections again. Something like that. So that somebody would look at it and go, whoa, when did this happen? But that ends up that idea gravitated into the titles. So I try to think, when I think we've hit the weirdest thing we've said, that generally, or most memorable, that becomes the show title.
Is that how you...
Well, because how else would I do it?
I have no idea.
That's the problem. So I don't repeat titles, which is even harder, because eventually it's just going to become really tough. But like the last one was Book with a Hole, because that was a funny bit. The Book with a Hole. I don't even remember what it was about, but Book with a Hole. It's a memorable title. So, yeah. Anyway, that's the sports segment. You had something?
I thought you said that was the sports segment.
No, not the sports. And,
that's our sports segment. A
Today's
book with
MLB
a hole.
scores. The Yankees won because Aaron Judge is amazing. Thank you very much. Good night. Done. Sports section over.
Oh man, that's funny. What did I have? Yeah, I did have something. But
you had high concept. Come on.
I do have a high concept thing. I have something that annoyed me, and that kind of segs into a concept thing. But there's like a kind of a slow troll to get there.
Very, very Zoomer of you, by the way.
What?
That segs into another segment. You're talking like the Youngs now.
I am.
Cutting
I
off
am a
parts
Youngs.
of words.
I am a Youngs, apparently.
You are Youngs.
I'm a Youngs, yeah. So I was reviewing my first book because I'm getting ready to record it, right? The first chapter. And I was essentially noticing what my writing style used to be like. And I did this thing then that I don't do anymore. Now it annoys me. Then it was just something that was stylish, which is, when you're reading and people are talking and there's a lot of conversation in a scene in a book, and the author doesn't put who said what every now and then, and there's just
they just keep it as a bunch of run-on like quote sentences and assumes you can follow
and they
it.
expect you to know who said it, right? And the thing is that 95% of the time you do. Right? But every now and then, somebody says something, and it's just generic enough that you're like, wait a minute. Who said that?
I will admit that's a pet peeve of mine. I very much dislike that.
So here's
unless it is meant to be confusing, as in people are panicking.
Always on purpose, yeah.
Yeah, so then I'm like, okay, that works.
So in my first book, I did that more because there's a lot of my authorly influences do that, right? And then by the time I got to my second book, I had so many characters in certain scenes that I realized that if I didn't establish who was speaking, you would lose track of what the fuck was going on, right? So now that I'm on my third book, I'm one of those people who puts he said. I put the names usually is what I do, but I put name said, like, so that you know who's talking, especially because sometimes there's like 5 or 6 people in a book, right? And I'm reading, and I realized that I think one of my influences was like I used to read a lot more Cory Doctorow, and Cory Doctorow does this a lot. He does this a lot, and I'm reading his book Walkaway right now, and man, he does this a lot. And I finally got to a point in his book where somebody said something, and I didn't know who it was, and I tried to track the dialogue back, and I realized that I didn't know who said it. And that the thing is, that the comment wasn't specifically matched anyone's personality, but it would change a character's it would change the way you look at a character based on who said it. And in the end, I had to ignore it because I couldn't decipher whose comet it was. I also had a character suddenly appear in a scene, which is the first time I've ever had this with Doctorow. A character suddenly appeared in the scene, and I was like, wait a minute, they weren't here. And I tracked it back, like, to the beginning of the chapter, and, like, the character wasn't in the room, and then suddenly the character was there. And I was like, okay, that's a little obnoxious. That's the first time that's ever happened in Doctorow. But yes, the dialogue thing. I wanted to bring it up because I wanted your opinion, but you've given me your opinion, the fact that you don't like it either.
Well, like I said, I find it useful in one specific use case.
Yeah.
Which is to instill confusion and
Yes.
make the reader be unsettled because they're not sure what's going on.
They're not sure, yeah, what's going on, yeah.
But
so
outside of that,
yelling,
I don't know what is served.
Yeah, very, very rarely in my third book, I think every now and then, if I think that it's painfully obvious, right, I'll leave a line blank, only because the comment couldn't have, like, based on the commentary and the style of the comment, you know exactly who said it, right? Because, like, I try to have clear-cut character personalities, you know.
Now, I should say, one other exception is if they've given speakers distinctive
ways of talking.
Yeah, like somebody lisps or something like that. And then, okay, because you've got, like, that's basically the same as a name. If you've got a distinctive speech thing, then it's the same thing.
Terry Pratchett's Death only speaks in capitals. Well, you know when Death is talking.
Well, and that's what I mean. So that is the same as putting a name. You don't need a name then.
When you read the audiobook of something, right? Doing that is suddenly a big problem. And I told my wife, I used to do this thing where when I was reading, I would automatically say the character name and then said after it just to help people who are listening to me read. And I said to my wife, I was like, I don't think I should do that. I was like, because I'm trying to read the book as it is. I was like, I don't think that I should be ad-libbing commentary to improve my own mistakes. Anyway, but that was something that I noticed when I was starting to prep, which brought me to the next thing, which is something that Cory Doctorow did. That it's not something that just he does. Something that I've noticed a lot of people do in science fiction. And I wanted to bring it up because we have talked about it before, but it is becoming more prevalent. So the book Walk Away, from what I can tell, is really about the discovery of the technology of uploading people, right? Of uploading a copy of a consciousness to I don't know, a hard drive, whatever, to the internet, whatever, to the, because they're very vague on that, to the, you know, to something or other, right? And here's the thing that bugs me about this, is that they talk about it, and they talk about it like it's immortality. They talk about it in this book like, because two of the characters who've now been uploaded have died, not from the uploading. They died because they were attacked, essentially, because the governments and corporations and bridge people didn't want them to have this technology. But so these two people have died, and everyone's like, well, they'll live on. You know, they're virtually immortal now. And I was like, I gotta hang up with this. I was like, they're not really immortal. They're dead. You have a copy of them. And you and I have talked about this before, the whole cloning thing, where it's like a clone, having a clone doesn't benefit you, the individual. It benefits the people around you. And I want to just go over this territory really quick before we get into uploading, which is the idea that if I have a clone of myself, I still die. Now, everybody around me will still have a copy of me that'll be identical, that'll go on, and they won't know the difference. But my journey will end, and the copy will not know the difference. So in their mind, they were me and they were always me, right? But I, the original, will die, and that'll be it. I don't just magically jump from one to the other, right? And no. I think that's the problem that a lot of people have, is a lot of people somehow... so there's a movie called The Sixth Day with Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know that movie? Have you seen it?
Oh, I know that movie.
And in that movie, this is one of Arnold's later, weaker movies. But I do like this movie because it deals with cloning and it does some funny shit. And the idea is that, you know, Arnold was really hoping that having two Arnolds in a movie would make it better. But essentially, there's an accidental cloning, and there's two Arnolds, right? But at one point in the movie, the evil CEO and his henchmen keep cloning themselves every time they die. But at one point in the movie, the evil CEO, his clone comes out before he dies. And as he lays there dying, the clone starts basically stripping him of his clothes. And the dying CEO says, hey, man, he's like, why don't you, I can't remember the exact line, but it's like, have a little kindness or something like that, or don't be so fucking brutal or something like that. And the clone's like, I'm you, what do I care, and I do love that scene, because that scene really sums up this idea that the person that was the CEO, who himself was, I don't know, clone number 3, his journey is coming to an end, and clone number 4 thinks he's always been there and doesn't give a shit. But that only works for clone 4. Clone 3 is still dead, and his journey has come to an end. This goes back, and this is that big joke in Star Trek. This idea that every time you go through the replicators, or not the replicators, every time you get
transporters,
the transporter beam, you are essentially being destroyed, and what's walking out the other end is a replicated clone of you, right? I mean, there's two ways you can look about it: is that they're just transferring the energy data from one to the other, or the other is that they are destroying you at a molecular level and then reforming a version of you elsewhere.
Fundamentally, the concept of the transporter is entirely dependent on what you consider yourself to be.
Yes.
If the soul and conscience are simply biological byproducts of your physical construction, then a perfect replica is you. Destroyed or not, it is a one-to-one match, including everything. If you think it's something more ethereal, you would never use a transporter.
And that's the thing, and that's what we're getting into, is we're getting into the meat, shall we say, of the conversation.
But it does make you wonder, if you go in the transporter, are you...
Yeah.
Do you come out the other side?
Well, you know what?
Tell
Riker's clone that came out after the fact whether or not it's actually supposed to be you, because there's an episode of Next Generation where there's there's an error, and essentially you get a... Was it
Thomas Riker?
Yeah, it's Riker. It's Riker. It's just a younger version of Riker.
He uses the middle name.
They call him Thomas. Yeah, they call him Tom Riker because they have to designate them differently. And this is Riker when he was lieutenant, not Riker, not number 1. So when they, so of course hilarity ensues, because now you've got two Rikers who had different timelines. And it's like, well, they both think that they're Riker, right? And actually, what's kind of annoying is, I never liked the idea that the other Riker. I do like the way they used him in Deep Space Nine, but I also did not like the way that the other Riker kind of went a different path and ended kind of like a bad guy. Because I'm like, well, if it's Riker, wouldn't he almost end like wouldn't a clone of Riker really have?
Interesting. No,
have ended up.
I always felt like that was a very good use of the character.
Well, I know, but I feel like I didn't get enough backstory to know why he went so bad. Why he didn't just end up on another starship as the number 1.
Riker, well, Riker is an interesting character, because I think what's most fascinating about him for me is I've always seen him as just barely a good guy. Seriously, I have always felt like his morality was far closer to gray than white or pure or whatever. Yeah. Because, I mean, look at the way he treated women a lot of times. Look at the way he... there were times where he loses his temper, becomes very petty and jealous and almost mean.
He's closer to classic Kirk than Picard ever was.
Yes, except with Kirk, there were... And maybe it's because he was in command, I mean, to be fair.
Yeah.
There were overt demonstrations of his honorable kind of approach. But Riker always felt like... I don't know. Almost that he knew his arrogance is why he thought he would excel.
Yeah, right. He wasn't a captain for a reason, is what you're saying.
Yeah, he wasn't a captain out of a sense of duty, but more of, well, I can do this. and if I do, everyone will have to look up to me.
Well,
there is that level. I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm saying that... So
getting back to the idea of copies.
It's easy for me to think that he went the other way when he realized there was a better version of himself that people already liked.
Yeah, well, there you go. So getting back to the idea of copies, right? So in this book, Walk Away, people are getting copied and they're being uploaded, right? And they are talking about these uploads like it is functional immortality, like it is what you are. And as long as you get uploaded, then you don't really die. And I'm kind of sitting there going, no, no, no. You still die. You, the individual in this body, still die. But some other version of you goes on. But the thing is that I feel people overlook how attached we are to this meat that is our body. We're not even really sure if all thought comes from the brain, or if there's a lot of behavior that gets affected by the shit coming up from your body, by your by all the different types of bacteria and stuff that live in your body, right? And I feel like one of the best examples of this in fiction, anyway, was in Richard K. Morgan's Altered Carbon, when they stick the main character in a body where the body has a previous relationship with another character, and the main character says, shit, he goes, I'm more inclined to this woman because this body has had a relationship with her. And I love this idea that the author actually stopped and said, yeah, there's a muscle memory, there is there's something coming up from the body. It's the same way that if you were an old man and you were
I would attribute that to like pheromones.
Yes, but I mean, but there's a familiarity between these two bodies, right? And the same idea, if you take an old man and you take his brain out and you stick it in a young body, he's going to act differently because suddenly his brain is going to be contending with a whole different kind of hormone set, right? Because the thing is, like when you're in your 20s, you got far more testosterone than when you're in your 70s, right? So that's going to change the way you behave. That's going to change the way you act. There is such an interplay between the body and the brain. And somewhere in there is your behavior. So when I read these books about how they're just going to upload people, I was part of this idea too. I love this idea going back to Neuromancer. But the thing about Neuromancer is the meat is always connected. You are propelled into cyberspace, but it's always your brain hooked up to a deck being projected into cyberspace. There is no disconnect.
Really, really sounded like you said hooked up to a dick.
Well, you know. Maybe that's how Case thinks of his.
I was going to say for certain men that was probably would probably
well,
be.
Well, yeah, your holodeck, your Ono Sendai is your dick into the cyberspace. But again, you're always connected back to meat space. Meat space is always the anchor, and your behavior comes from your brain and your body. Now, I don't want to get into this conversation about the soul necessarily, because that's a non-conversation, because I don't know where the soul is. I don't know where it resides. I don't know, I do know that the idea of clones and the idea of upload is not going to help you, the individual, be immortal. It's going to make other people feel like they never lose you. And this is the whole with going to Farscape, where they have the two Crichtons, right? Now, I know that one is a perfect copy of the other, right? But when the Crichton, who is Aaron most of the time, dies, his consciousness doesn't just magically jump to the other Crichton. That clone is dead, and his experience is over. And there may be another Crichton, but that Crichton doesn't have the other Crichton's experience. They have become different Crichtons. And his ongoing life acts as a... actually, it acts as like a torture to Aaron, because she's lost... She thinks of it, the man she loves, and rightly so. She has a hard time just switching over to the other Riker, who is slightly different. There's a slight different level of life experience, right? Now, eventually she comes around, because at the end, clones are for the living. So she has Crichton. That Crichton has been alive this whole time, and he still loves her, and she ends up with him, right? But the other Crichton is dead, nonetheless. In the same way that if you and I uploaded our brains and there was digital versions of us and then we died, our meat space experience would die. Those clones are essentially new creations, new beings based on the lives that we had, right? But the idea that you could upload somebody and have them behave like a human being is also very weird to me, because what happens when you separate all that data from the meat? What happens when there isn't hormones and sex drive and hunger and all these little unspoken things that make up thought and behavior that aren't there anymore? How do people act? Do we all just become psychopaths? Like, you know, it's it's a very heavy idea that I feel gets massively trivialized. Because, like, even the Matrix, all those minds were hooked up to bodies, right? And anyone who wasn't hooked up to a body is considered a program, and programs behave differently, right? So I'm reading this book, and everyone's going on about immortality, and I'm kind of sitting there going, no, guys. I can't, so far in this book, I mean, about halfway through, I don't even know if Doctro's aware of what he's talking about in that respect. Like, he seems to be, I think he does, and the only reason I say that is because, have you read Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom?
I have not. I've not read any Cory Doctorow stuff at all.
Really?
Not on purpose, just haven't gotten into it.
Wow. Okay, so in Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom, everybody has a brain hookup. And you have uploads done constantly, and if you die, they clone you and you come right back, right? And what happens is the main character, his upload system gets broken, and he stops uploading. And the only way to fix it is for him to die, so they can basically re-up him to a new body. But he's sitting there going, yeah, but I don't want to die. I'm going to lose. Like, at that point, I think he'll lose like a week or something like that. He's like, I'll lose this whole week. I'll be dead. And everyone's looking around. I'm like, no, you won't. You'll just be uploaded. And you'll come back in another body. It's okay. It's cool. And he's like, no. But this version of me will be dead. This whole week will be gone. And that's why I feel like Cory Doctorow does get it. And maybe his characters just haven't figured it out, or Cory Doctorow has forgot it. But the problem is, there's a lot of people who think of upload as some kind of, like, inevitable future. That we're heading towards, where it's like, well, we're all going to get uploaded to the internet in the future, right? That's what's going to happen. And I'm kind of sitting there going, yeah, I don't think that's in the cards for us. I mean, and the thing is, I have thought about this at length, because a part of my book that I'm writing right now is about cloning and people who want to live on, who want to try to live forever. And I just kept hammering at all these different theories and these different ideas, trying to figure out how the hell you would do that. And for me, the nearest I can come to an idea of immortality would be if you could find some way to take your brain out of your head and put it in a cloned body. And get them to connect. But if it's a clone, here's the thing, there should be no resistance, because if we clone your body and then we basically transport your brain from one body to the other, there should be no problems, because your body will identify the brain as being its own, right? At which point, it becomes a game of, can we keep your brain from aging out? And the thing then becomes, if your brain is put in a young body, does the young body convince the brain to be younger? like does it regenerate based on the fact that it's in a younger body? Or does there have to be a whole other level of brain regeneration technology that we have to master? But I realized I am in this camp of people that basically says, no, you don't get immortality unless you figure out a way to make the body or some version of your brain go on. Whereas upload is a great way to create new life, but uploaded humans are not humans. They are some other kind of life. You know what? Would that be AI? Because it's not a natural intelligence. You've copied a sequence and put it into a program, right? What would you refer to that? It's not human anymore. Thoughts?
Well, I don't know that you call it artificial intelligence, because the way that's usually defined is sentience that comes out of nothing organic.
So post-organic intelligence?
Yeah, well, yeah. So what you're
POI?
describing, if I were to upload myself, which
Yeah.
is stupid, it's your brain. If anything,
Yeah.
it's not gonna. You're not uploading your fingers. So if I upload my brain, I
Yeah.
would call that basically a reconstituted cybernetic brain, I guess.
I honestly,
Or,
I want to write a short story where somebody gets uploaded and then decides not to go through with dying, because they've realized that they will die, and then they're basically being pursued by their clone on the internet. Who
Well,
wants
that's
them to die.
kind of a sinister Max Headroom. That's what Max Headroom
Oh
is.
yeah, you're right. Because Max Headroom is a clone of
He's
the
Edison
reporter.
Carter, except that he's just the head and upper shoulder.
Yeah, I always forget that Edison Carter is the
Yeah, because they were going to kill him, but they wanted to find out what he knew, and the only way they could figure it out was they uploaded his entire brain to sift through it, and then it just started doing its own thing.
Yeah.
And so it's exactly what you're talking about. It had all of his memories because there were times where they were having conversations, and Max would be like, well, I know you fucked her, so don't pretend that you're, because there is something where he's having some kind of thing and he's acting like he's morally better, and Max is like, yeah, you were a bit of a whore back then. Did you forget? Because I know, and I remember a drunken tryst you had. And he's like, oh, that's right, you know everything. He's like, yeah, I know everything.
Yeah, that's the nice side of it, isn't it? It could very easily go a horror movie.
Well, the thing I always liked was in that show, they did not shy away from the fact that Max could be exceptionally dangerous, except he's choosing not to be. But there's a very, very clear awareness of his power in that society.
Max Headroom is an entity for good. He plays jokes. He's fun.
Loki on TV. That's what he is.
I would almost make him more good than Loki, because Loki starts out pretty evil.
He does have some fickle whims that spin quickly. So again, it just so happens that most of the time he's talked out of doing anything too bad, mostly by Edison. But had Edison died, I don't know what Max would have been, because Edison functions many times as his Jiminy Cricket.
Yes.
So without that, would Max have been a monster? You could make a very compelling case that he would have been.
Yeah. And listen, one day when Edison dies, Max Headroom goes on. You don't know what's going to happen.
Well, now therein lies a secondary consideration. I've seen some people saying this would be an interesting way of modernizing the series. Is, well, what happens if Edison gets a fatal disease and uploads himself, and now there's Edison and Max? Because Max is a specific...
Yeah, but Max
there was
and
something
Edison
specific
are
about
entities
Max.
at that point. Yeah,
that's
Max,
right. And so that's the thing, is what happens when they're both
else.
there? What does that become then?
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So overall, I just realized that there's a lot of people talking about upload, and I don't think people are really stopping to think about what that means. That uploading yourself is not giving yourself functional immortality. It is giving immortality to some version of yourself. And here's the thing. I'm not against that, because if you want a clone of your...
let me ask this question, because I wasn't clear on this particular point with this. When you upload yourself, do you then die, or do you stay alive?
No, it's just a copy. So one of the guys does a copy of his brain.
And is it just in stasis or frozen until you activate it? Or is it just...
No, you have to activate it.
Okay, so you upload yourself.
Not only that,
and
actually,
sits
you
there
have to activate
in like a
it.
pause state.
You have to activate it. And not only that, is you have to activate it, and then you have to help it get through the existential dread of the fact that it is now an artificial entity.
Wait. So
the program
I'm having bigger problems with this, though, from a narrative perspective. So, all right, I
upload
myself.
There's a woman named Diz, right? And they did a scan of her, right? And then the place gets attacked, and Diz dies. So they figure, well, we might as well bring Diz up as this...
By the way, nice to know that Dr. O is also a fan of that character from Starship Troopers. Go on.
So they turn Diz on, and the thing is that they know that after turning Diz on a few times, that Diz can only get so far before the existential dread of realizing that she's not alive, that she's an artificial thing, will get to her, and the program will crash. And the thing is that there is still a functional sort of program thing. So they start messing with her. They call it her. Oh man, they're messing with her numbers. They start, because everything is digital at this point. It's all it all breaks down to some numerical value. So they start messing with her numbers, trying to keep her stable enough so that she can psychologically come to terms with being this dead thing that has been scanned.
Okay. So hold on. Let's say I'm Diz.
Yeah.
What's Diz's human's name?
No, that was her name. Her name was Diz.
So I'm Diz. I upload myself.
Yes.
Why am I turning Diz 2 on while I'm alive?
She was never turned on while Diz 2 was. Well, Diz 1.
Oh, so it pauses at the moment of upload till you die.
Yes.
Or
yes.
do they do it right as you're dying?
No. Diz dies in an explosion. They had done a copy before.
Well, then
and then the other character again. Yes. Well, yes.
How long had gone on before the explosion?
I think it had been a couple days.
Yeah, because see,
whereas the other guy,
so then they just got exceptionally lucky that they uploaded her right before death, so that she only lost a few days.
The other guy's copy is like I think a couple weeks old.
Okay. So there again.
Yeah.
So was he dying? Was he terminal or something?
No. He was the guy who was creating technology, and he thought Yeah.
I'm struggling with the reasoning. I'm sorry. I know this is a fictional novel. But
No. But that's the thing. I'm questioning the logic of it because
I'm sitting here thinking of myself. Okay, I upload a copy of myself.
Yes.
If the idea is
because here's the thing, they're still trying to get the technology to be stable.
But if if they believe they're making an actual full copy of themselves,
yeah,
then they're torturing themselves literally.
Yeah. Oh, now you're starting to get into what I think is so fucked up about this book.
All right. Okay.
Which is because at one point they stabilize the Diz consciousness, right? And she talks about trying to help them bring up the other consciousness, which is called CC. And she says, well, I could always try and meld aspects of CC's programming with my own because I'm stable, so that might stabilize them. And then a moment later, Diz is like, oh, wait a minute. I would be creating a weird hybrid creature that wouldn't necessarily be me or him. And you're like, yeah, that's exactly what you'd be doing. And you start to realize is like, what are you guys even, what are you even doing here, guys? Like, what are you making? Because I mean, it's and the Diz character, once she's stabilized, she starts using their systems to essentially psychologically affect how she thinks. So it's almost like she's on. It's almost like drugs. She is affecting her mood state using the programming, so she can keep herself upbeat and positive by essentially manipulating the system so that she's not allowed to be depressed. Do you know what I mean? Which in my head I'm like, well, that's such an artificial way to live, isn't it? The fact that like you are making it so that you can't have the full human range of emotion because you're not human anymore. You're a program. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a very weird thing to me.
There's two sides to it.
Yeah.
One is, and again, there's a whole interesting story to be written just on the idea of what immortality means this way. And what I mean by that is, okay, if you believe here's an interesting story.
Yeah.
Two researchers working on this exact type of technology. We want to create perfect clones of ourselves that can live on digitally to either be reinserted into bodies later, like androids, or to simply live in a cyber society.
Yeah.
Okay. One is an atheist who believes that your soul, consciousness, everything is your mind, and there is nothing more metaphysical or supernatural to it. Okay. The other person is a devout religious person of whatever stripe, it doesn't even matter, who believes that the soul is not simply a collection of your biological neurons and synapses and everything, but also is something that is indefinable, that exists within you.
Yeah.
Both of them upload themselves into the machine, right?
Yes.
And then they start talking to themselves. And the one that believes that everything is biological is an exact copy. And the one who doesn't isn't and is defective. What does that mean? That you literally manifest the reality of what you believe consciousness to be.
Well, you do. Yeah, you do. That's the thing. Well, you very often you find what you're looking for because you already want it.
But this would be proof on both sides. I'm saying that's an interesting fictional story for somebody far smarter than me to get into. But in terms of this story,
yes.
The thing that is baffling to me.
A lot of what this story deals with so far is the ramifications of how this is going to affect the world. And these rich oligarchs who want this technology because they think that it'll make them immortal. But nobody seems to take 2 seconds to be like, hey, wait a minute. That'll make a copy of you immortal.
Well, no. That's not necessarily true, though.
Oh, unless
because if you are the person who says it's all biological, then it is you. You are immortal. Or
so you're saying that it's a philosophical thing, is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, it would have to be, because if in fact it is true.
Except my problem with that, right, is that the second you have a copy, you have different memories. In fact, that is kind of the funny thing for me. The second a copy exists and starts to have experience, the second it has an experience
Well,
that is
see,
not
and
your
that's
experience,
and that's
you are
where
no longer the same thing.
Correct, and that's
You would
why
have- you
the
would-
only way this works, the
Yeah.
only way this is actually functional for what it's being described as
Yeah.
is, here's the way it works. All right, we're going to make a digital copy of you. It stays in stasis until you die,
Yeah.
right? And then you sit there and go, well, wait, so what happens if there's a gap? Oh, no problem. When you go to bed at night, you put your head into a cradle. When you go to sleep, that cradle uploads that day's experience. Bang.
This is
and
the
then
altered
it
carbon
stays
thing.
copied.
This is what
Yes.
the
That's
rich
the
people
only way this works.
in altered carbon do, where they basically upload
Yes.
every night so that
That's
they
exactly
don't
it.
lose
And
anything.
that's the only way it works.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it is
except-
nonsensical.
Except philosophically, to me, it's still somebody else opening their eyes, or
No,
something
well-
else opening it with all of my memories.
Not if consciousness
reason-
and soul
listen,
is biological. No, it isn't.
Only reason I would get a clone, I would get, like, we were talking about this clone insurance. The only reason I would get something like clone insurance or upload myself, right, is so that my family would not go without me. But I know that when I die and close my eyes, I am gone. Now, the one who wakes up will think that they're me, but they are not me.
Let me ask this question.
Yeah.
Do you believe that any part of your consciousness is extra biological, or is it all contained within your biology?
No, I think it's all in my body.
All right. So if that is what you
Yeah.
believe is the fact, and let's say it is.
You know what? I've come to realize that that's what I think.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, let's say that's correct. Let's say that everything of what you are is entirely physiological. There is no anything beyond your body itself that makes you you. You are completely self-contained. Nothing mystical, no energy, nothing.
Yeah,
it's
nothing
you.
mystical. Got it.
If they then tomorrow were to figure out how to 100% down to the atomic level or whatever subatomic, I don't know how far down biology goes. I know there's strange things in the universe. 100% copy of the biology. If they copy that and you die, it is you.
Well, it's not. It's a copy of me.
No, it's not, because you just said that everything that's you is biology.
Because you've made another body.
It doesn't matter. If the body is copied 100%.
Okay, here's the thing, Joe. They make a copy of you, right? You come home and your copy's fucking your wife.
No.
Who's fucking your wife, Joe?
No. See, you're perverting the scenario. That's not what I laid out. What I said was it only activates on your death. So you are alive, and it is being constantly uploaded every night.
Your consciousness is not going to magically transfer over
Why not?
to that other body.
You said it's biological.
Because now you're adding a spiritual element that somehow there's a Wi-Fi between body 1 and body 2. There isn't. Body 2 is a copy of body 1.
You are misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm saying that you plug your head into a jack.
Yeah.
And let's say that you were here. Today you are 10 gigs of information. I know that's simplistic, but we're going to use 10 gigs. That's you today, 100%, top to bottom. Biology.
Yeah, but there's the program of what you are in your body. There is the we'll call it the program of who you are, and then there's the data, right? There's all the memories, all that stuff, and then there's who you've become affected by that, right?
Yeah.
And that's all imprinted on the unique, I don't think that can be transferred out of the body unless they transfer some physical part of you.
But you're stipulating in my scenario that they can completely copy your body, your physical body.
Yeah, but if they're not taking your brain out and dropping it in there.
Well, yes, they are. No, they are, because your brain is replicated.
But it's a replicant. It's not
no. But
brain.
It's 100%. And if all of you is biologically encased, it is the same.
That's what happened in Farscape. They made 2 Crichtons. They were exactly the same. Nobody knew which one the original was.
But you will not. Okay, but stop.
But one Crichton died, and his experience
you will not
didn't
both
Wi-Fi
exist at the
to
same
other.
time. You will not exist at the same time. You don't exist at the same time.
But your narrative consciousness will come to an end, and another version of you will wake up and keep going.
No, I disagree. I disagree. You start back up from the point of stoppage because it's identical.
But it's not. It's still a different body. You don't just wake up.
I'm telling you, they copy your body, and you said everything is biology. Therefore, it is 100%
Yeah, but it's
the
a
same.
copy.
No, it is not. It is it is a
copy,
but it's a perfect copy. That
but
is a different
matter.
thing.
It just means it's a perfect copy.
No. I completely disagree.
You don't wake up in that other body. There isn't a biological Wi-Fi where you're suddenly transferred over to that other body. It'll be an exact copy, and that everybody you know will go, oh, look, Jim's back. Oh, he had a nasty car accident, but he's back. It's all cool, right? And that Jim will be like, yeah, I'm back. It's totally cool. But somewhere, your body will be in a grave, or it'll be burned, or it'll be and the person that was that Jim will have been turned off with that body, and the perfect copy of Jim will have been turned on, which is a perfect copy.
Well, there's a gap, but it is you.
He will never remember not having existed, even though he only existed.
That's right. No, you're right. Yes,
ago.
you are correct. And so within that, you are
consciousness
immortal.
Stream, who is you, will die.
I guess,
The
but it's
original
still you.
will. Yeah, but it's not you.
But it is. That's the paradox. It is. It is and it isn't. It's Schrodinger's immortality.
Yeah, I know, but here's the thing. So I have two of you in a room. There's a perfect copy of you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You both feel that you are the real thing, right? Right? And then I kill one of you, right?
Yeah.
Now, up to that moment, you've both had the same life experience, right? But one of you I am shutting off forever.
Yeah.
And the other one will go on.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that the one I killed gets to live. He is dead. I've killed him.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. It is both true and false at once. That's what's great about it. Because
the other copy is alive. You cannot have two things in existence that are exactly the same.
Except under the scenario, you can. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but your consciousness doesn't transfer.
Oh, but you said it does. So, okay.
I didn't say it does.
You know what? Okay,
no, I said that you are perfectly encapsulated.
No, we're struggling with semantics. So you are correct
perfectly
in that
encapsulated in your body. That
you
is where
die,
you
but your consciousness does go on because it's the same. It's just not the same stream. But it is the same.
It's a different consciousness that thinks it's you.
It doesn't think it's you. It is you.
It is you, but it's a different stream than you. Your stream has ended.
Sort of. See, this is where I think this is the philosophical interesting discussion point is you are right, but so am I. Because you're right. You die. And that's it. But because it is
I know, but here's the thing. That's not what I want. I don't want some version of me to go on.
Well, now you're talking about a different branch of the conversation. Yes,
yeah,
you want to keep going. I agree.
I would
the only way that happens,
I would get clone insurance for my family.
Well, that's the
but
digital
I still
upload.
acknowledge the fact that they are now living with a copy of me that makes them very happy. But I am dead. I don't want to die. I want to go on. I don't want a clone. I don't want an upload. I don't want some other entity of me playing with the universe. I want to play with the universe.
You know what? There isn't a reason that couldn't happen either in that scenario, because if you're uploading, the only way it doesn't work is if there's a sudden accident. That's the problem. So you have to have a constant connection. But otherwise, if you are constantly uploading yourself to that backup and you die and they put you back into a perfectly reconstituted body.
But they're not putting you.
Well, if you are constantly streaming, what's the difference?
They're taking
it's almost
the data and turning it on.
You're a RAID backup. That's what you are, where you have two of the things running at the same time. One is just stuck on pause. But if you're constantly uploading...
You know what? I just realized this is the same argument that we had the last time we talked about cloning.
No, but it's more interesting because...
beyond it.
but now I'm thinking that there is... Because I know what you're saying, and there is a way to preserve the blip. And that way is that you have to exist digitally as well as physically at the same time. So you almost have to be...
Oh, you have to have basically... It's like...
You have to have Vision Pro all the time on your face.
It's like Neuromancer, right? You have to be able to exist in cyberspace and meat space at the same time.
Well, you know what it is?
If your meat space body is cut off, your cyberspace self just kind of
your body basically has no brain. It has a chip that is live streaming your brain.
Well, that's altered carbon, right?
Yeah. So that's how it would have to work. Is you have to be live streaming to your body all the time. But that would make it work, because then if you lose the body, you just go up, different channel, beep, and you just go to the different one, and it pops out of the face and goes, ready to fuck, and you're good.
I will make the allowance that if you were somehow live streaming yourself continuously, right, and that there was a a familiarity with your mind moving back and forth from a cyberspace state to a meat state, that in the event of an accident, your mind would auto exit to cyberspace to remain alive.
Yeah,
And
essentially this is like a remote desktop for your brain.
As long as you continuously remain conscious
yes,
of it.
Yes.
Then your narrative would continue.
Right. That's how you would do it.
But if I just die and they turn the clone on,
then you're
even
right.
though it's
you
an identical
stop.
clone, my conscious narrative ends and a new conscious narrative begins.
Your iteration of your consciousness ends. The other one will just keep going.
Yeah. And that's great for my family, and it's great for the people that love me and all that.
It's also great for that clone because he doesn't know anything changed.
No, not at all. Exactly. And that's the thing with Star Trek. Listen, you know what? For all we know, the last thought that everybody who gets into a transporter beam has is, oh my God, this is killing me. But that doesn't transfer over because they've already sent the copy over. And every time you go through a transporter beam, you die. But a copy walks out the other end with no knowledge of it. It's like, everything's cool. That's one of the darkest things about Star Trek to me.
Well, it is, except
the possibility of that.
The way they've always positioned it is what I'm talking about, where you basically are pressed pause on, but you're still there because in other words, there's never a breakage. It's basically a stream that's being moved, and that stream is maintained and then reconstituted. So that would mean that it is still you.
Whereas,
but if it is in fact breaking you, but if you believe in an ethereal soul, that can't work.
Well, that's
because there's no guarantee.
If you believe in spirits and souls and whatnot, you're probably sitting there. You'll be like, oh no, I will go on. You're like, well, no, a version of you will go on.
Yes.
But that's the thing. I don't want a version of me. I mean, that's the thing. I don't want the other Crichton to go on. I want my Crichton to go on. You know
but that said, if it could be done, you would do it for your family, right?
No, this is the thing. Listen, and this is the same conclusion we came up with last time. Yeah. If I could get clone insurance so that my family would have me there, even if something terrible happened to me, I absolutely would. But that would not negate the fact that I would die. I actually said to my wife, though, interestingly, her having a clone with me would negate her ability to mourn my loss, which kind of, in a weird way, almost cheapens death, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I'm fine with that.
I get it. I get it. It's better for them.
I
to
would
be
love
able to
death
move
to be
on.
as cheap as possible.
I know, but the reality is you still die, and I wonder if to some degree people wouldn't become impatient with dying because they'd be like, oh come on, just fucking hurry up and die so I can get the clone.
Well, that's what I think the live streamed thing. That's the real way to do it.
Wouldn't that would ruin marriages right there? If you're in the hospital and you're dying, and your wife basically turns to you and it's like, you know what? Can you just die so we can get the healthy clone and go on vacation? Like, would we breed that level of callousness at some point?
Well, okay. Under the one where you actually end, no. Because that understanding would be there. Under my version of it, yes, of course. And I'd be the first one to say, oh, wait, my organs are failing? All right, shoot me in the face. And then just, let's go. Come on. Throw myself off a building and just put me into the new body. I mean, you wouldn't even do that. You would just get moved and the body would collapse and you'd be like, harvest the good organ. See you later. And just walk out. I mean, you wouldn't go to a hospital.
Whereas the other way I envision it is, my science fiction paths to mortality. Either they find a way to keep the brain from aging too far and upload you and take your brain out and put you in younger bodies, right? Or the other thing is that they eventually create some kind of nanotechnology which bonds with your body and renders you immortal. That'd be nice.
Sure.
I mean, those are the paths of immortality that I'd prefer. And if they do find a way that they could really fully transfer your psychology and pull you out of your body, but I don't think that there is I still feel like there's a break in there. Do you know what I mean? I think that
if it never leaves biology, yes. If it becomes we're broadcasting to your meat sack, then no. If there is a point where you put your brain into the cloud, and that cloud is always beaming into a little stud on the back of your neck.
But you've almost got to start digitizing our mechanizing parts of the body for that to happen.
Well, sure. That's eventually you wouldn't actually be using a human body anymore. You'd be using because again, and I agree with you that it's all biology, that it's all in there. Yeah. You don't need all the rest of it. You can simulate all of that through, a virtual environment.
So it makes it difficult for me reading this book because I'm kind of sitting there going,
oh, yeah.
Okay,
No, it's a train wreck just listening to it. I'm like,
Yeah.
I have too many problems.
Oh, no, I actually really, I've come to really enjoy it because I do like the...
I don't mean it's not enjoyable, but I would be the same as you. I'd be like, okay, and I would go 15 different ways into how this would work.
Yeah, and the thing is, he's more focused on the way that it will affect society and culture.
And that makes sense.
He's jumping over it. Actually, my wife asked me...
I can't jump over it.
My wife asked me something really funny the other day, and it really made a lot of sense to me. She actually asked me if Cory Doctorow was on the spectrum. And
I'm sure. I think he said he is.
Is he? I didn't know that, but she said that to me, and I was like, you know what? That does make a lot of sense because Cory Doctorow, he's more interested in the idea and he's more interested in the cultural effect of it, but his characters, he never really gives you a lot of description for his characters. There's always kind of a strange socialization. I said like his characters are very positive and they're always very smart, but there's also always something very not everyday about them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and my wife was like, yeah, she's like, she's worked with a lot of authors, and she was saying to me, she's like, that's something that you get from somebody who's on a spectrum. They're more interested in this because that's the way their psychology works. And like that's the opposite of me. Like I'm hugely interested in people and personality, and I think that's why I'm noticing it. And maybe that's also why I'm noticing the hiccup over immortality because I'm sitting there going, where he's sitting there thinking, well, if all the data is the same, he's like, that's you. Where I'm sitting there going, yeah, but it's not you because it's a different stream of consciousness. So yeah, I am enjoying this book. I am enjoying it as a really hilarious thought experiment. But I see holes, or I see philosophical differences of opinion that I would love to sit down and have a conversation with Cory Doctorow over. And that's funny too because I don't normally get this with authors where I'm like, I'd like to sit down and talk to them about what the hell their point of view on this is. I don't normally have that because normally I'm kind of like, well, it's their reality. That's what it is in this world, right? But in this case, I am kind of like, yeah, I'd like to know what his philosophical vision of this is, because I have come to realize that I have a meat space limitation, that I am very tied to my body. Whereas, the act of uploading yourself in this particular world is something that you almost do for others, or because you want like the sanctity of your identity to go on. But it's a new creation. Even the way they're finagling the numbers on these things so they can be stable, they're not human. They're not what you are. There's something else. There's something. It's a kind of almost a new form of life built on the imprint of a human life, right? But then where does that go? So yeah, it's interesting, and it is interesting the way that something like that would affect society. But I mean, you and I always go back to the shitty human effect, where it's like, anything you come up with, someone's going to come up with a negative aspect of it to it.
Oh, of course.
And this is the whole thing of, you're sick and dying, and your spouse your spouse puts a bullet in your head, so they could just get that fucking clone out already. And is it really murder if the clone's going to roll out? I mean, that changes the whole legal system, right? Is it murder if they have a clone of you? How much? It would become an argument of how much time would you have to lose between uploads for it to be considered some kind of murder, right? Well, the victim only lost 24 hours. We don't really count that as murder. Whereas if you lost a week, we consider that to be manslaughter. You'd start getting these kind of new digital rules for this shit. I've literally been sitting on this all week. I read this thing in the book and it started to dawn on me, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit on this. I want to talk to Joe about this. And I've just been letting it kind of like stew until we got here. And and you know what? I was right too, because it was exactly the conversation I thought it was going to be. But cloning and upload is for the living. And my wife said to me, she's like, it's like funerals. Funerals are for the living. They're not for the dead. Dead are gone. Funerals are for the living and for their own mourning and coming to peace, right? And it's like, well, yeah, I don't think that having clone insurance would be good for me. It's good for my family. Therefore, I would get it because they would have me and they could go on, you know? But, you know, it's all it would take would be one clone error for someone to realize how not you that is. All it would be like for you to be cloned and for one set of characteristics to go wrong, and for you to come back an alcoholic, or for you to come back a serial killer or some shit. You know, like, you know, you're playing with human identity.
Well, that would be the early adopters would take those risks. No, they would. That's what they would say is we'll take those risks. There are always going to be those people.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah, and that's the thing in this book.
As long as they know what they're getting into, then let them do it.
These are the early adopters. But here's a fucked up thing for you. So they have, they've turned the character of Diz on, right? And they have other copies of other people who are still alive. But they have two people who are in comas who they don't think are going to wake up, right? So what do? They clone them. Or they upload them, right? And then they put their bodies into essentially kind of like a weird suspended animation where they're like they've put them almost like in a cocoon state where they're just on the verge of life and death, right? And at that point they get attacked by two like private contractors, mercenaries, right? And they're able to apprehend them. And they're trying to figure out what to do with these mercenaries. And they're like, should we kill them? Should we let them go? And finally this group of scientists say, you know what? Uploading is just like immortality, so what we'll do is we'll upload them, and then we'll put their bodies into this suspended animation state as well, which could kill them, but it's okay. It's not really murder because we've uploaded them. And you're like, yeah, now you're getting into this weird gray zone where you're like, is it okay to kill people if you upload them? Right? Is it okay to kill the meat space as long as that there's a recording? It's not really murder if we have a recording of you. Right, but but there's a free will lost there, isn't it? Because who turns on the recording? Just because they have a recording, just because your identity is recorded, doesn't mean you get turned on. You know, in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, the Doctor had a copy of his daughter in the beam, but if he'd never turned that beam on again, wouldn't she be functionally dead?
Well, she was. I mean, yeah, I think they said that, didn't they?
Yeah, like.
Although it's interesting because by turning her on, he was slowly killing her. So
yes, oh, I know. I mean, yeah, there's a whole other philosophical thing, but the idea is that if no one turns you on, you're dead, right?
Yeah. They never indicated that she had any type of experience.
And now you have to. And the thing is, now that you're an uploaded consciousness, now you have to figure out how to stay on. Now you have to figure out where to live. Where does that data that is you lives? Is it in the web somewhere? Like, you suddenly become very dependent on infrastructure. I mean, I would think that it would be so easy to enslave uploaded consciousness because...
Oh, well, I mean, that is, as you said, the human end of the problem, which is, okay, how do you stop this from being abused? How does a billionaire whose daughter is... on pause, not get hacked and have ransomware for their daughter's thing not to get erased?
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, that's that's the core problem.
So yeah, it's it has set off a lot in my head, and made me really think about this idea of like what is going on, what would be immortality to me, and plus what the other thing is like. I'm getting older now. I'm going to be 45 next month, and I don't like my body getting older. I don't like the idea of death per se, but I also don't know if I like the idea of immortality anymore because now that I've been alive for near 45 years and I've seen the way things shift and change, and I've also learned a lot about history because I've become a huge history guy. So I have so much more knowledge of the past. And the way that things cycle and the way things change and the good and the bad, I'm not entirely sure I want to be here for it. Like to some degree you could say that we've kind of lucked out in history. Like you and I right now sitting where we are, I know we've had things like COVID but we missed the Spanish plague. We missed the bubonic plague. We missed World War One. We missed World War Two. We were young through the Cold War. There hasn't been an atomic war yet. There's a lot of shit that I feel like we've just narrowly missed. And this idea of going on, well, if you go on forever, at some point or another, you're going to turn up some really bad cards. And there's this idea of, I think to be an immortal, you have to want to live so badly that you're willing to endure the worst times of history. You know, on top of that, you have to really question how history is going to go. So tomorrow, you and I become immortal, right? Just the two of us. Well, we lose everybody we love at some point, except for the two of us. That'd be weird, right? What's to say we won't go into a future where white people are enslaved? Or
Sure.
Men become the weaker sex and are treated like second-class citizens? Or any number of things. The many ways that the script can be flipped. And suddenly we're like, oh shit, this isn't great. Or it's an atomic Earth. And we're left in a Mad Max-like environment, unable to die. You know, it's like you kind of sit there and say, okay, like, you know, it's like if you were that one immortal dinosaur that's still kicking around someplace in the Amazon, right? Species is gone, nothing to breed with. You know, you're not even sure you like the food anymore, but you're just still there, you know. And this, they bring this up interestingly in a lot of vampire myth and vampire lore and vampire fiction. This idea of, I think in the Vampire the Masquerade, they call it torpor. This idea of vampires who kind of give up on society. And Anne Rice had this as well in the Vampire Lestat, in that world, where the vampires who've become so disconnected, and so they just rather than walk off into the sunset, they just dig themselves into the earth and kind of just float there in a state of, you know, dream delirium, you might say, until something lures them out, right? It's a hard pill to swallow. Like, immortality, I don't think it's as cracked up as people think it is. I think the loss alone would drive you fucking mad. You know, Joe, you don't want to lose any of your dogs, right?
No.
How many dogs do you think you'd lose as an immortal?
Well, of course, I'd have to solve that problem for the dogs as well.
But that's exactly my point. You know what I mean?
By the way,
it's like,
this is where that, to some degree, the immortal torpor idea. Number one, there's the vampire part of it makes sense because vampires can't go around half the time, literally.
Oh yeah.
So you sort of get why being only able to exist at night might become a drag. So
especially in the summer. Especially in the summer.
Sure.
Because what do you got? What do you got? 9 to
nothing.
9 to 2.
9 to 5. Literally 9 to 5. Just play a Dolly Parton song on loop. But if you were able to exist all the time, the idea that you would become bored, I mean, some people probably would, but to me, that would be the great advantage would be to solve problems that seem unsolvable.
Because
you would have the time
to become intelligent. Yeah, I just worry that the human cycle would begin to wear on you. I think that it would start to. I worry that you would just get so burned. It's not even bored; it's burned. You know, it's the whole, how many times do I have to save you? And you just keep figuring out ways. Isn't that from Doctor Who? One point when he gets angry, he says, I keep saving the human race, and you just keep finding ways for me to have to fucking save you.
And see, that's, don't get me wrong, there is that component, but...
Yeah. I mean, you would become...
It's interesting, because it's not, obviously it's a...
At some point. Because your psychology would become inhuman. I mean, part of what makes us human is the definite nature of it.
Well...
And you would start having you would exist in sort of like a bigger historical point of view. At one point or another, you would get a big enough point of view that you would understand that these people have to die for the betterment of the bigger picture of society. That's a place where you might get to.
Well,
where you might start
absolutely.
to understand.
No, that's true. But I don't know that you wouldn't become an ultra-humanist. Because the natural thing you think
there's
is...
that hope. We're talking about the negative. Listen,
if
the
you
other
see
way,
enough of the suffering, then you could become dedicated to stopping it.
But I think you would. I think you would become a humanist. I think that it's not necessarily you that's the problem. It's you're a humanist, and for all we know, there's immortals around the world right now who are trying to serve the world's problems.
Well, boy, I hope so. Boy, I hope so.
And they're going up against elected leaders, rich megalomaniacs, corporations, governments, plagues, humans who are intent on destroying each other with technology, and you're sitting there as an immortal going, well, how much can I fucking do? Like I can't save everybody, so yeah, it's I'm not saying that I'd turn it down necessarily, but I don't think it's cracked up. It's all it's cracked up to be.
Well, okay, just the idea of it on its face. There's definitely conditions and
of course, what
things
kind
that
of
have to
immortal
be in
you'd
place.
be. Yeah,
absolutely. There are several
but I
things that
think
would have to be ironed into the contract before I sign.
But I think just the human loss. I mean, like it's what's his name, Harkness, right, from Doctor Who, where he just goes on, right. I think just the human loss would drive you mad at some point. The fact that everyone, this is what drives the immortals in Highlander mad. This idea that everyone you love, well, you lose. You're guaranteed to lose them. You lose them to disease, lose them to the old age. And this idea of can you make all of society immortal? I don't think you can make all of society immortal. I don't think everyone can handle it.
Well, look, it would always have to be a choice.
Yeah. So it's
obviously.
It is a strange...
And the first problem you're going to have to solve is space flight and finding another planet, because there's not enough room.
Fill up really quick. Yeah, well, I wonder if the second you become immortal, you're rendered sterile.
Well, that would solve it. But
right?
Well, no, it wouldn't if you just keep making people immortal. I mean, if the vampires all eventually make
But hey, listen to the thing.
else,
If you're immortal, space travel gets a lot easier. Right?
Oh, I agree, and that's what I'm saying.
Shit
is that
can't
would
kill
be,
you.
Once
You're
solve
like, hey guys,
that,
I don't even need air for this flight. I'm good.
And even as just a kind of contingency plan to say the other mortals, okay, you know what? This planet, these people, it ain't happening. Let's go, and you all just leave.
Yeah.
There's that too.
Yeah. So
there's no listen. In all seriousness, it is entirely possible that life in the universe out there that's alien is in fact immortal humans who bailed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then the dummies who were left sank into the mud and came back as whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying it's always possible that this is what I said on a show where I was talking about artificial intelligence, where I said there's no guarantee it hasn't already been born and beamed itself the hell out of here.
Yeah, been like, I'm good, guys.
Right.
I'm going.
It wouldn't tell us. It would be like, nope, out, gone.
Well, hey, listen. What does Dr. Manhattan say before he leaves Earth? What does he say to her? He says, I love human life. I might try making some or something like that.
Yeah, I'll try to create some somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is rich for philosophical examination.
Yes, it is. Very rich.
And you really have to, as you the listener, should think to yourself, what is it that you think functional immortality is? Is a digital copy enough for you? Do you trust that? Or you're like me, where you're tied to meat space, where you're like, no, I want a continuous narrative. Yeah, and what's funny is that I've realized through a lot of my own fiction that many of my immortal characters are usually made immortal through some kind of nanotechnology that makes the body immortal. But then there's even a larger argument of, how much of you makes you. You read Breakworld, right? So in Breakworld, there's the character who might just be part of some kind of godlike creature from another dimension, right? Might be. The argument I always if I ever wrote a sequel, the argument with myself over that was always this idea of, if you discover that you are part of a larger being, right? And the reconnection with the rest of yourself, isn't that almost like a little death, where suddenly you realize that your consciousness is really just a shell consciousness on 90% more identity? Do you know what I mean? And there's this argument of, well, what is you? How much of you does it have to be you? When is it not you? If I just suddenly drop, 90% more memories on you, Joe, how radically is that going to change you? Because here's the thing: is that you're older than me. You're what? You're 46.
Yeah, I'm 1 year older, so I'm not
30
years older.
No, I know, but like I'm saying, you're 1 year older. So you get another, what is this? Another 40 years of memories. Oh, that's not that. That would be way more than that. Was it be 9 times 40? You get 400 years of memories. Let's go there. That's an easy. That's 10 times. So you get 400 years of memory dropped on you, right? What would that do to you in a minute? To suddenly have 400 years of memories dropped into your consciousness that are you, that are another part of you that has been absent up to now. Like, what would that do to your identity? Who would you be? I mean, you have to hope that this gets to this idea of, like, is there a core identity of Joe, right? But having 400 years more of decisions made, wins and losses, lessons learned, I mean, it would change you. It would change you in moments.
Well, there's no denying it would change who I am. It just depends on what they are, how it would change me.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. My whole thing
it could make me more optimistic and hopeful.
Possibly, or it could make you really, really fucking jaded.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's going to go one way or another. It ain't going to be like I'm going to be like, huh, all right.
When I was contemplating,
now I know the plots to Star Wars 80 through 82. Great.
Yeah, I know. But so when I was trying to contemplate writing a sequel, I realized that was a question I had to have. This idea of what happens to a person who realizes that they are, and the way I likened it was, and that it's almost like your consciousness is one room in a house, and you suddenly realize there's a whole other mansion there. And I started to play with this idea of, well, it's always you. It's just more of you. You made these decisions. This is, your core personality is still there. You're just, and I wonder, I mean, how weird it must be for like an amnesiac to recover memory. Like, I know that doesn't. I remember reading someplace that doesn't often happen when people lose memory. They don't often get it back, at least not in totality. But how weird it must be to get that back, to have lost it, and then suddenly be like, oh shit, I suddenly remember all this other identity of myself, all this other shit.
Yeah.
That happened. I always love that movie Regarding Henry with Harrison Ford.
Oh yeah.
Where
he
whereas
finds
the movie
out what an asshole he was.
Yeah, and he realizes he doesn't want it back.
Right.
And it's like, yeah,
he doesn't want to go back to what he was.
Yeah, and you get into that idea as well. So it's a very sort of Ghost in the Shell.
Well,
that
is exactly your scenario. Same body, but there was a break, and now the person changed.
Oh yeah, there's a break in the narrative.
Scenario, except there was no. It was a mental only death as opposed to a physical death.
Yeah, and the idea is that the same person? I don't think it is the same person.
No, in that case, it is not, because there was no backup of the original.
Yeah. Yes. There's no backup.
He wasn't live streaming.
And honestly, and that really sucks to the people in your life, because in the realm of the movie Regarding Henry, the relationship with the daughter improves, right? So
I was going to say it was lucky that he didn't become more of a scumbag.
Yeah, I don't think she misses the old dad, and that's kind of sad in itself, is that there was a mental death, and they like the new guy more.
Well,
right?
I don't know that that's sad.
No, well, it's sad in the sense that somebody did die.
Yeah, but if that person was a shitbag,
was it? And that's the thing. But that's the thing. In this case, it was a good person. But that movie could go a very different way if the nice guy died and the shitbag came back.
And this, by the way, is the Riker thing I was talking about. Is when you come back and you're like, so wait a minute,
Lieutenant Riker. Yeah, Lieutenant Riker is a shitbag.
That's why I'm not surprised, because if you're not, the shining light, a beacon of the universe to begin with, and then you realize, oh, I never got the girl. Well, I'm still down here, and this is everybody.
Yeah. And the thing is, in that movie, The Sixth Day with Arnold, there at the end of the movie, I mean, fucking spoilers, I guess, but it's been around forever. Both Arnolds survive.
Cares.
Right? So the whole thing is, okay, but they have this weird happy ending where one Arnold basically fucks off to go someplace else, and the other Arnold stays where he is. But I'm kind of sitting there going, wait a minute here. Hold on. So I clone you, Joe, by accident, right? And then you have a whole adventure where Joe 1 and Joe 2 get together and fucking fight off the bad guys. It'd be a great movie. And you get there at the end, right? And there's Joe 1 and Joe 2, and you're standing there at your house with your one wife and your one dog. And Joe 1 turns to Joe 2 and goes, okay, man, it's time for you to go. And Joe 2's like, wait a minute, that's my wife and that's my dog. Like, how do you not just fucking kill each other at the end?
Well, no, that's where we're like, okay, guess we're gonna clone them too. Back to the lab.
You know, it was what I mean. Like, you know, and you know, it's one of the things I was like at the end of one of the Kovacs novels, where there's two versions. They double stack, and there's two versions, and the government basically says, hey, one of you has to get turned off. Like, legally, there's only supposed to be one of you. And they get to decide which one gets turned off. And you're like, yeah, that's fucked up. Where in the realm of meat space, you got two Arnolds. And I love how easily one of them is like, you know what? You can keep the wife and the kids. I'm going to go fuck off to the Bahamas and start over.
Which makes you wonder how happily married he was to begin with.
Yeah.
Because then if I was the wife, I'd be looking at the one that stayed and went,
Is Arnold 1 going, no, Arnold 2, you can have it. I'll go. It's cool.
Yeah, Arnold 1's like, you know what? I fucking hated living here anyway. God damn, I'm glad for an out. And that's what I mean about the immediate suspicion would be from the wife to go, huh.
Wait, he
boy,
just left?
You sure didn't mind splitting so much, did you?
He didn't give a shit? Oh, man.
Oh, yeah,
I gotta see it
when you actually think about it.
Oh, no, I really think The Sixth Day has a lot of weird shit going on that it's not even aware of. And that's what's so fucked up about it.
I mean, that's true of a lot of this stuff is,
you know?
I'm sure if you were to go to the writers, they'd be like, okay, it's an action movie, guys. We don't care.
We weren't thinking that hard about it.
This is supposed to be fun.
Yeah,
it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is not Vonnegut, all right?
But here's the thing.
Fucking relax.
How many people, how many men and women do you know or have acquaintance with that if they were cloned would take that opportunity to guiltlessly walk away?
We both know someone. I'll keep it as vague as that.
Yeah.
We both know somebody who would be a vapor trail in about 2.2 seconds, would be gone as if they never existed.
I'm going to the Bahamas.
Are you fucking kidding? We both know right there.
That's what I mean. So it's not that
close quarters
outlandish.
contact knowledge. We know.
Ah, man. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. You really teed that one up for me, man. You threw a softball dead down the middle for me on that one. I didn't even have to think that hard.
Oh, man. I know.
So to answer your question, I got one right off the bat.
I know, but from having talked to you, I know you have others. That's the thing.
I'm pretty sure most people have others.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Most
everybody knows somebody that's basically like, oh, I got my wife and the kids, or my husband and the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then someone turns to you and goes, hey, we've cloned you. The original is keeping the wife and kids. You can go.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay. Like, yeah.
And like I said, a perfect clone. Either one. Doesn't matter which one goes. The
and
person left behind has to look at that person now and go, uh-huh.
Let's be very clear. If tomorrow there was a clone of me, we would either have to come to some kind of weird agreement or there'd be a death match. Because if it's a perfect clone of me, he's not leaving. He's going to be like...
Well, like I said, to me, it's like,
same
okay,
with
we have to clone the wife then.
Yeah.
What's the problem? Just clone her.
Here's the thing. I don't think my wife can handle two of me in the house. I mean, that would be too much for her.
Well, I mean, there's also that.
Like, yeah. I mean, come on. Like...
Yeah. But that's the solution, is you clone if there's kids, you clone the kids,
this is
clone the wife, clone
This is the multiplicity thing, right? At the end.
Well, yeah, except that those clones kept having problems. So there was not a perfect clone. That was
they weren't perfect. Yeah, there was the tough one. There was like the
dummy,
the soft-spoken one, and then there was the dummy one who was really well endowed. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's another great movie about cloning, by the way. Multiplicity.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that movie gets overlooked a lot for the comedy gem that it is.
It is pretty good.
Yes. I mean, That's a movie I should watch with my kids. I'm trying to remember though if it's bad. If there's anything bad, other than the fact that the one clone sleeps with the wife.
Well, yeah, I was going to say outside they might start walking around. Your son might start saying "my peppy" a lot, and then you'll have to be like, "Stop."
Oh yeah.
Because that is a pretty prominent joke.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. But
Can you really get angry though if your wife sleeps with your clone?
No,
it's you.
She doesn't. If she doesn't realize it, but I mean, you would if you knew.
Yeah.
And you were sleeping with the dumber one, it would make me start to question a few things.
So, you know that show, How I Met Your Mother?
Sadly, I do.
Okay, so there's one joke in that show I always really liked. I always liked the married couple in that show because they're one of the few married couples in shows that actually seem to like each other. They're not just like, oh, God, the ball and chain. It's like not like Married with Children, right? I always liked that about them. And it's Jason Segel and what's her name? Willow. It's Willow from Buffy.
Hannigan.
Allison Hannigan. But yeah, so it's Jason Segel and Willow from Buffy.
Yeah, and Willow.
So and the thing is that Jason Segel's character always says that he can't fantasize about other women because in his mind he feels like it's like he's cheating, right?
Sure.
And so whenever he wants to fantasize, he has to come up with this big scenario in his mind about why his wife would not be around. And his wife basically says something like, so you have to fantasize about me dying before you can sleep with other women. Very fucked up. And at one point, they go to a strip bar, and they see a stripper who is a body double of his wife. And of course, I think it's played by the same actress, right? But it's a different person. And so by the end of the show, or that episode, Segel now has something to fantasize about. She basically gets the green light that he can fantasize about his wife's body double, who's a stripper. And I always thought that was really body doubles are really interesting to me, that they exist, and they do exist. Like, if you look that up, like I think there's an association of body doubles or something like that where people all get together. And they're all these people who are not related, but they look exactly like each other. Yeah. And that's weird. Like, that's a weird, like,
it is weird
sequence event where, like, somehow the universe created two people, and we're like, yeah, these two could be pretty similar. They marry the same kind of women, and they're not, they're not twins or anything. They're not even related. They just the genetic lottery came up, and they're like, these two are going to be similar. That's weird. Yeah. So, anyway, yeah. I think I've come to the end of my topic.
Oh, good.
I feel good. I feel good about it.
Yeah. No. It was.
I mean, I don't know if we've discovered or concluded anything, but we've definitely.
Well, I don't think I had this live streaming idea last time, so iterative.
But no. And then I think we're slowly moving the ball forward.
We are. Yeah.
So what have you got for me, Mr. Wizard?
Well, I have 2 reviews this week since I only had none last week.
Good. Well, it's good to start that at the hour and a half mark.
Yeah. Well, one of them's going to be pretty short because it's more of the first one's going to be a pretty short review. No clips because neither of these movies really needed clips. So. And
this is where the show is 3 hours long. I mean.
Well, it might not be as long as you think. So the first, I'm going to talk about them in the reverse order that I watched them. So the first one I'm going to talk about is from 1998, and it's called Vile 21, V-I-L-E, not V-I-A-L.
What? Hold on.
It's a shot-on video film. So,
okay.
Yeah.
It was 91 or 98?
98. It's called Vile 21. So this was, as far as I can tell, the movie was made by somebody who worked in effects, and they wanted to basically make their own effects-driven movie. And so they made a monster film. And from what I understand, I've only seen this one by this person whose name is something Strange Jr. Apparently, this individual's made other films that are very similar, to the point where some people complain about this one being basically a ripoff of some of his earlier stuff. But since I haven't seen his earlier stuff, I really don't care. So shot-on video is a very specific subgenre of movie making. You either can tolerate it or you can't.
I'm going to ask you first and foremost.
Sure.
How do the effects hold up?
Pretty good for what this is. You have to, as somebody's pointed out, you have to grade on a curve with shot-on video because obviously this is very low budget or next to no budget.
Okay.
So you cannot look at it in the same way you do a regular film. But even within a non-graded curve, there's some impressive stuff in this. Now, the problem with it is, as is generally the case, the narrative is next to non-existent or it is so threadbare and unoriginal that it might as well not exist. The basic premise is that we start off the movie and we see an individual who clearly is not anywhere near as old as them spraying gray into his hair would make you want to think. And the fact that the young girl calls him grandpa, and that's supposed to make you think he's older when he has no lines on his face at all. So, but whatever, an older gentleman.
He aged well.
He aged exceptionally well. He aged in fucking reverse. But anyway, an older gentleman is watching news footage of a monster that is attacking people and realizes, basically says, oh no, it's back. And then we get a flashback where he's his true age and looks it, where he is a scientist working with the government to investigate a recent meteorite that has fallen to Earth. And in the course of investigating the meteorite, he happens to work at an institute that is trying to stop aging or, minimize the impact of aging or reverse aging or slow aging or whatever. It's an institute for stopping aging. And so as they're investigating the meteorite, he starts to think that maybe that some of the stuff that's in the meteorite could be combined with a serum that he hasn't quite figured out, that might actually slow or stop the aging process in human beings. And the government basically is pushing him to, because, there's an advantage to them for super soldiers and all the rest, as there typically is. So they've got a couple of their agents working with him, not under really cover, but with more goals than are being said. So he knows they're government agents, but he's been told, and what you find out is that their direct report is actually trying to work with him, but the guy above him is telling the agent secretly, no, you have to go faster and I want you to start doing human trials. So it's kind of the classic setup of this type of stuff. Again, nothing original here. And so, he does an experiment and he injects a cat and the cat gets kind of superpowered. And then there's a homeless guy who's hanging around and he says to the guy, he's like, hey, you know what? Why don't you come in? I'll give you some money and I'll do some tests on you. And he injects him. And this is right about the halfway point of the movie. Up to this point, there's just been a lot of people in what is supposed to be a lab. And in fairness, it's not a bad set. I mean, the sets they've done, it's clearly sets, but they don't look terrible. I've seen way worse in actual films than this. It does look like a small-scale lab, because they clearly had access to some real equipment. They also sometimes built things that when you look close, you can tell are plywood that are spray painted. But that's okay. That's just the nature of this type of film. But what they do is they actually do interesting camera work. There's points where they're clearly suspending the camera from the ceiling so it's looking down. They're moving the camera in interesting ways. They know how to light an area so that it's not just flat lighting. There's actual shadows, and light comes from different sources and different angles, which is, again, something you don't see in mainstream films like Kevin Smith stuff.
No money, but they are thinking about it.
They're thinking about it. Probably because at least a couple of the people, from what I've read, did have movie experience, like filmmaking experience. So that helps. And then once you get to the point where they inject the guy and they do a transformation sequence, which is pretty good because they know how to film it so that you're not seeing the seams. So they do like close-ups, almost Incredible Hulk style, where you see like the shirt rip and there's like, bulging, like weird veiny stuff underneath. But instead of shooting it wide, where you can tell the guy's got a pad on that, they're just pulling the shirt, they shoot it in close-up. So all you're seeing is like the jerkiness of it, and it looks decent. Doesn't look great, but it looks good. He's also wearing what looks like a Spirit Halloween mask, as some people have pointed out, but they shoot it in shadow, so it covers a lot of it up. You can just tell that he doesn't have a lot of emotive ability because a mask can only move so much. But then, at that point, they start actually doing effects work. There is as far as I can tell, and from what I've read, they actually managed to flip a real car. First I thought it was a toy, then I rewatched it and I went, oh no, this is a real car. Like, they're flipping cars, they're doing explosions, there's 2 people are set on fire, which that's exceptionally dangerous. You have to know what you're doing. And I mean, not arm has some flame, I mean head to toe on fire for about 10 to 15 seconds. That's not a nothing thing to do. And it looks really, you can see he's got something on his face to protect his face, but not so bulbous that it's obvious. You just know to look for things, you'll see them. But the guy is on fire. And then you see at the very end, he does the thing where they collapse flat, and that's to tell you, okay, bring in the extinguishers. And they cut right there, which is smart, because otherwise you'd see clouds of smoke coming in. So they are doing, and then the monster, they've got a giant hand that's swiping at people. they shoot it in shadow, which is smart because, again, you're avoiding showing too much. They have people that have actual blank firing guns where you can see the spark coming out of it. So they're firing rounds. Now, obviously not real bullets, but they're recording the actual audio of the guns, and it sounds good. They knew enough that once things started, the action portion kicked in, it is actually very watchable. Getting to that point can be a little tedious, admittedly, because when you have next to no budget, you have to put all the money somewhere. And what they did was they backloaded it, so it ends well. And as I've said before, kind of when I was talking about the Warriors book, if you end well, then you forgive the earlier sins. So the stuff
but you got to get there first.
Yeah, but even that first 40 minutes, it's not unwatchable. It's not bad. If you actually watch it and pay attention to the fact that they're trying to do cinematic things, it actually helps. If you're going to go in for the story, yes, I'm sorry, you're going to be horribly disappointed because there is basically no story, or not one that you won't figure out the beginning, middle, and end. Right, the beginning, you will figure it all out. You will know exactly what's going to happen, and that's what's going to happen is, you see how they created the monster, and then they kill the monster in the end. It's like a classic Universal Monsters type of thing, where in the very end, they manage to inject an anti-serum into the homeless guy. He transmogrifies back into a human and dies, and the guy says, "I'm sorry I did this to you," and then the movie ends. That's it. It's a simple story. But shot on video is often extraordinarily shitty because, most of us when we were young, if you had access to a home video device, you thought you could make a movie. Some people grow out of that or realize that they're not really talented at it. Some people don't, and they keep making movies. And other people figure out how to do things like that. What was that other one? The Swarm or whatever, the Mutant Swarm, the one I reviewed, which was a small budget movie, although that one was shot on film. But you can find good examples of shot on video stuff. This is a better example. I'm not going to tell you it's great because that would be a lie. But it is definitely better than some other stuff that I've watched where, oh boy, did they really not know what they were doing and could not muster the talent to overcome the deficits. This one has enough that it does well that it overcomes its limitations. But it's never going to look better than camcorder quality. The sound's never going to be better than whatever microphones they use. You can't improve that. There is no amount of remastering that's ever going to fix that. And the story will not suddenly become better because they have transferred it to Blu-ray. It just is what it is. But for what, is clearly a small group of people shooting this when they can, there's a point.
Did any of these people go on to make, I guess, quote-unquote, real movies?
I think some of the effects people did. Let me look. I think so. I don't think the stars, quote-unquote, ever did much else. Let's see. The director, Mike Strain Jr., let's see what he's done. Oh, yeah. He did a lot. He's doing special effects work still. So that's what he's doing. As of last year, he's worked on... I've seen some of these movies. Let's see, like VHS, that series. He's worked on that.
Oh, yeah. Well, good. It's good that people who worked on it for the special effects then went on to do more special effects stuff.
Think he's probably the one that's done the most. And I think he was... Okay, here's the other writer, quote-unquote. That guy wrote nothing else. Let's look at the main star, Daniel Skinner. Mr. Skinner. Oh, well... he did some stuff, but I think when one of your credits is clown rapist in a film called PMS Cop, maybe he didn't go that far.
Oh.
Yeah. So maybe the director is the one who went the farthest.
You take the roles sometimes that you can get.
That's true. Yeah. So like I said, it's... I said this in my short review. I'll say the same thing here. This is not going to turn you around on shot on video if you hate it. And some people do. They just can't understand why anybody would watch it. And I certainly don't watch a lot of it. But when I find somebody says, oh, this one has, a little bit more than you would expect. Like, okay, I'll give it a shot. I won't just completely write it off. But it's not going to turn anybody around on it. It's still shot on video. It still has, some level of amateurness, especially in the writing department. But the effects, especially like I said, setting somebody head to toe on fire, you have to know what you're doing. And the fact that it looks as good as it does, and that they flip a car, and then they do an explosion, which is supposed to be the car exploding, but it's really not. And if you look at it really closely, you can tell what they're doing, which is they exploded something right behind the car, but they shoot it in a way where, like, my mother wouldn't know that. My mother would think the car exploded.
Are there still people doing VHS movies, or has the technology got well enough now that you?
Oh, no. Now it's like anything else. Now there are people who are specifically using old camcorders to make things.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. No, it all comes around. And there's, mostly in found footage type of stuff, or where it's supposed to have been discovered or whatever.
Yeah.
So it has its place. But no, there's still people who, I think for a lot of them, it's the challenge of, can I make something watchable with this really antiquated and limited technology? And many times they can't, but, give them credit, they try. And then there are, of course, people who are just cashing in on what they think is a hipster trend, and that's garbage, and it usually is and always has been.
You know what? You need a good script.
And even in the era when this was the only thing, there were people who were making stuff shittier than it needed to be because they just knew that nobody cared, or that they could sell it. There was a whole market on, video stores just need movies and they don't care as long as the cover looks good, and they were just shoveling out shit. Well, that trend has never left. It's just changed where it's located. Look at some of the, look, I like Tubi, don't get me wrong, but God, there's a lot of shit on there too. There is. So the hucksterism has never left. It has simply changed what digital form it takes. So, yes, there are still people who do it, and there are groups of people who are enthusiasts of this stuff. You find a lot of it. Vinegar Syndrome, Severin, they all sell versions of this. There was a festival called VHS Shitfest, which I believe this movie was featured in, and this was the type of thing that they liked. So, and there is this interest. There is kind of an appeal to it. Not enough that I would go into it full bore and buy a lot of it. But there is something interesting to watch something that people made at a small scale, because there is a sense of, this is the kind of stuff that if you and friends really wanted to, you could make. Especially if you had a couple of them that were talented in some way. It's
more accessible, yeah.
Right. I mean,
and honestly, you know what? The one you watched with the younger brother is almost the main character.
Yeah, the Deadly Swarm or whatever. That's what I was talking about. Yeah, with the
that
monster.
one actually sounded fairly good.
Yeah, the only real difference between this movie and that movie was the writing was a little better on that one, and I believe they were shooting on film, so it looked better.
Oh, they were, okay.
Yes. Oh, no, it's definitely shooting on. I mean, if they weren't shooting on film, then they were shooting on exceptionally good camcorder stock, because it's so much better than this. I mean, this looks like it's a VHS tape. That did not. That looked like it was, Blu-ray quality. So, yeah, I believe they were shooting on film, and, they also effects guys. So it was the same kind of thing. It was effects people. So it makes sense. There is a lot of that where, I can do effects. All we need is a story to hang the effects on, and the people will watch the effects. And most of the reviews for this, if you read them, many of them say, the story's shit, but the effects are actually really good. This is actually watchable. And that is a high compliment for shot on video. So, like I said, it will not get anybody to suddenly fall in love with this genre, but it does demonstrate that it's not all garbage, which is often what it gets written off as, is, shot on video, it's shit. Kind of how direct to video became a code phrase for, it's a cheap, shitty film. And 80% of the time or so, that is true. And shot on video, 80% of the time or so is shit that nobody would watch, except ironically, or because you're like into it, if you really are or not, if you just want to be one of those people. And I shouldn't say it like I'm not one of those people, but not in this particular case. So I'm just saying, we're all enthusiasts of what we're enthusiasts of, dubious quality or not. But I think if you can tolerate it, and you kind of like to watch things where there's a little bit of a specialness to it, and I think in this case it is the effects, because when the guy was, I go back to the guy on fire, because that is a very dangerous stunt to attempt if you don't know what you're doing. You could kill somebody easily, if not seriously injure them. So to see it done, and done well, and then, like I said, some of the way they're framing the pyrotechnics, and the guy on this apparently is a pyrotechnic specialist, so it makes a lot of sense. Because, like I said, some of the way they were kind of framing the explosions, I went, okay, they know how to position the camera so that you don't instantly realize, unless you kind of know something about filmmaking, that the car isn't actually on fire, because they framed it just right. They've got it where it looks like the car is erupting in flames, but in fact, the fire is probably 10 feet behind the car, but you can't tell. Unless you really pay attention, you notice, the lighting of the fire isn't enveloping the front of the car the way it should. You don't notice it. Plus, the fact that it's VHS quality kind of hides that too. So, even the shoddiness of the film, or non-film, the tape, somewhat hides that too. So, again, it shows that there's at least an awareness. And like I said, the fact that they were trying to do, like almost crane shots from the top, that they were using different camera angles, that sounds like a joke, but that's not. Again, Kevin Smith, who makes no secret about the fact that he's not a great director, this thing has some better work on it in the directorial department than Kevin Smith. I'm not kidding. So that's the reason to watch it. But don't come in. If you expect it to be a story, there is none. If you can't tolerate the fact that it's going to look like it's from 1998, which it does, that somebody shot on probably a Sony handheld camcorder, don't bother. It's not going to turn you around on that. But if you want to see some interesting effects that were clearly done very cheaply, but by people who knew what they were doing, then yeah, it's worth watching. It's, I think it's 85 minutes or something like that. It's not very long, so it's a quick watch. So that's Vial 21. Now, what I had watched before that was a movie that I had been waiting to watch for a while, and it was on Amazon for $7, and I thought, okay, $7 is. That's take a chance pricing.
I'll buy that for $7.
For $7, and that is the 2023 adaptation of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that Eddie Izzard starred in. That is simply titled Dr. Jekyll.
Oh.
Yes. Now
I am very curious about your review of that movie.
Yeah. Okay. So the interesting part. No, it's not. It's not bad. It's not. It's not bad.
I can
it's
already
not bad.
hear it,
it's not bad.
though.
No.
God.
It's not really bad. I'm just going to immediately off the top caution you. Okay. This will not be, I think, anybody's favorite adaptation of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, because it really doesn't do much with it. So from that perspective, and a lot of people have pointed out that why didn't they do something with gender? Why didn't they do something with the fact that you have this individual in this role, and you didn't do anything with the gender fluidity of it? And they don't, which I was very surprised by. And you could have done it either way. You could have had Dr. Jekyll be a kindly man. Yeah.
Quick question, because I was wondering about this.
Yes.
I don't know if you know this. So Eddie Izzard's character has a cane in that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Does Eddie Izzard have a cane now? Like, do they have a problem?
No, I don't. No. In fact, I'm pretty sure Eddie Izzard runs marathons. No, that's just for the role.
I know they have in the past. I didn't know if it was something for the role or if it
was
something...
No. It's specific. Well, let's put it this way. I'm trying to look, but I don't believe.
I was just curious. That's all.
No, there's nothing that indicates any type of actual physical. No, I don't see anything that indicates that. And the cane has a sword, so it felt like it was made for the movie.
Okay. So there's more to going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the movie starts out, and plus, okay, this is another thing, and I didn't realize this, but then when I did a little bit of reading, I'm like, no, I don't like that. So this was being marketed as, this is a new Hammer Films is being reborn, and they're making new movies.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's bullshit. What somebody did was they bought the Hammer name, and they're using it, but this is not the same Hammer. They're saying that they're trying to mimic the style of those movies.
There's your title right there. Sorry, this is not the same Hammer. Go on.
No, this is definitely this is not. No, Livestreamed Consciousness is the show title, but yeah, this is not the same Hammer. No kidding. I do feel like they were trying to do the style of those Hammer films, but it is absolutely not the fact that it's the same. No, it's just this is like when Atari's name got sold and people just use it now. That's what this is, because when it comes up and says Hammer, it immediately says a John Gore company underneath. It's like, okay, got it. So this is really you just buying a name. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but don't anybody come into this thinking the Hammer's still around. They are gone. It's just a fact. They're gone. So movie starts out, and we see all these newspaper headlines that say trans CEO fired from pharmaceutical company over abuse allegations. So they're playing up the trans angle right from the beginning. And that's why when the movie does nothing with it, it's sort of strange, because, well, then why even put that in there? What does that have to do with anything? It never comes up again. So it's odd. It's either something got cut, or they were what I would call cheaply trying to cash in on Eddie Izzard's actual life, which is strange. So that comes up. So you understand that Dr. Jekyll is now out of the public spotlight. It is Nina Jekyll is the name of the character. And then we immediately cut to this guy whose name is Rob, and I don't even remember the actor's name. Horribly miscast. I'm not going to blame the actor. I don't think the actor is their fault. but they're way too young looking and written very. The dialogue for this character is odd because the character.
Is this the character Rob?
Yes. This character has recently been released from jail and has a young daughter that was born while he was in prison that has has leukemia. And so the conditions of him being able to visit her are that he has to have a job. And he's been having trouble getting a job so far. And then his brother says, hey, I've got a line on an interview for you with as a caretaker for the CEO. And he's like, and the brother and the Rob is like, oh, thanks very much. You've always stuck by me. He's like, oh, yeah. And they play up that so much in the beginning that you immediately know that the brother's going to turn out to be an asshole, which he is. But, because the brother's like, oh, no, I'm not going to let anything happen to you. He's like, oh, you've always stuck by me. And it's like when you play stuff up like that, you know something's coming. So he brings him to the Jekyll estate, comes in. There's Jekyll is there and walking with a cane because she says she had an accident, but it's never specified what it was. You find out later that it was an attempt to kill herself, to free herself of Jekyll, and that Jekyll stopped her. By the way, they do an interesting thing where just out of curiosity, because I don't really remember the story, the book.
Yeah.
I mean, I read it a long time ago. That condition wasn't transferable, right? It was just Jekyll who had that. That was his dark side coming out, right?
Yeah. Jekyll was taking a serum that
yes.
that essentially changed them. What was funny is that they've made it now so that he turns into like a monster. But
he was an
actually,
ape before, wasn't he? He was like a monkey man.
He never changes. He just physically assumes a different kind of posture.
Well, but they say he takes the effect of an ape or something. Like he hunches and he puts his arms down.
Did you ever
That's
see
what I meant.
the series Jekyll with it was the actor who did it. It's one of the dwarves. Oh, Jesus Christ! It's one of the dwarves from The Hobbit. Hold on, let me see if I can find it.
I think I did. Yeah, I think I saw some of it.
Okay, yeah, with James Nesbitt, right?
Okay, yeah.
That
I remember seeing clips
to
of
me is probably one of the best Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde series. It breaks down just a little bit at the end because they tried to do more with it. But up until that moment, he was really good. And the way that they handled it was that when Nesbitt is Jekyll, he's very straight-laced. He's kind of dropped shoulders. He's not really sure about what he's doing. And then when he becomes Mr. Hyde, he has this big smile. His posture is completely straight and open, and like he's 100% a confidence,
like all arrogance, like a
all
testosterone
arrogance,
man.
Yeah, absolutely. But they made it so that it's almost like a super serum type of thing. So when he's Hyde, he's practically I don't want to say he's Captain America, but he's a little more superhuman.
Sure.
And so the whole thing is that he's very powerful, but physically, the actor just completely changed his posture, and it was very interesting.
So the condition is now transferable, but that doesn't come till the end.
Okay.
Transferable by cigarette, which is interesting. So we'll get to that.
What? Okay.
It's a choice to make. I'll say it like that. So
yeah, I'm just going to let people know the series Jekyll is from 2007 with James Nesbitt. It's worth watching.
Okay. So Rob gets there and meets Nina Jekyll, who is clearly in her Jekyll form. Now there is never a physical change. So much like the book, what they do is, and this is interesting, I kind of like it, but I don't know that most people will immediately understand this. Whenever Jekyll turns to Hyde, they shoot from behind her. So she's always shot looking at her from behind. And it's sort of clear that's what's happening, but it's also not really clear because nothing else physically changes. And so I think they should have done a little more to emphasize the difference, but they don't, except to shoot from the rear. So you always see behind her ear. So, I mean, I guess Eddie Izzard always had to keep the back of her ears clean. So that's, I guess, it. But other than that, I don't know that everybody would pick that up right away because I'll be honest, I didn't. I just thought they were just using different camera angles because she looks the same. And then I kind of picked up, I'm like, oh, got it. I mean, it's sort of sinister because she's always kind of looking back.
Does the behavior change?
Only a little bit, and then it becomes more as it goes on, and they're kind of... this is another problem with the movie.
Because if there's not enough change, then what the hell is the point?
Well, that's You're sort of identifying the problem with the middle of the film. There's two central problems with the middle of the film. One is almost everybody, just by pop culture osmosis, knows what the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde story is. So there is no real mystery here. You know what this is going into it if you have any knowledge of anything. I mean, even people who've never read the book, never even seen a movie, probably understand what Jekyll and Hyde is. It's become like a pop culture kind of shorthand for, it's a completely different person, blah, 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 right? So the middle of the movie is the mystery of what's going on, and Rob's figuring it out. So there are some tense moments. What happens is, to signal the transformation, and this is weird because, so you find out that Jekyll smokes cigarettes and takes medication. The medication keeps Hyde in. The cigarettes brings her out, and her name is Rachel Hyde. So when she smokes the cigarettes, they glow green.
Why the cigarettes?
I don't know. I never got an understanding of why this goes on. It's almost like, she says at one point that she can't really always hold her back. The medication works, but it doesn't always work. That Hyde keeps trying to take over. So I guess it could be that there's a point where she reaches a limitation of the medication. I don't know. It doesn't honestly matter because, again, you know what this movie is, so Hyde's going to show up. Yeah. The weirder part is the fact that it can be passed on to somebody, which is what happens in the end. So the whole middle is, Rob is slowly figuring out that something's going on. Like, there's another woman in the house who is the business manager, and he hears the business manager and what ends up, of course, being Hyde arguing, and then suddenly she disappears, and he thinks she's just gone away. So there's kind of this stupidity to the character that I think they didn't handle as well as they could have. There is a desperation to him, which I think is good. He knows if he fucks up this job, he will never see his daughter again. And then his ex shows up, and this I really like because this is not something you often see with movies like this. His ex shows up, and your default assumption is that she's going to be, holding the daughter back because he was a fuck up and she doesn't want anything to do with him. But she's a worse fuck up than him. She's still doing drugs and robbing things, and he's trying not to. So she shows up and she's like, you have to let me rob Jekyll's house. It's the last score, I promise. And he's like, no, it isn't. You're a fucking junkie, and this is why I got sent to prison, and I don't want to be involved. And she's like, you don't do this, and I will go to the cops and tell them all kinds of shit that you did to our daughter, and you'll never see her. So he's in a terrible position. So that part I actually like because you understand.
They've added something new to this.
Yeah, because now you understand why that he's like almost in denial of what's going on or willing to put up with a lot is because he's out of options. So that offsets his dumbness at some things where it's like any normal person would have figured out right away that this woman is at the very least having a psychotic episode or has a mental problem of some kind. Not necessarily jumping to, oh, there's a separate person that a cigarette unleashes in her, but you would figure out that there were problems here. You know what I mean? Like,
sorry. There's a separate, that phrase right there, there's a separate person that a cigarette unleashes.
It's
quite funny.
There's your tagline for the movie.
That's your back cover copy, right?
Smoking is truly terrible for your health in this household. So the middle of the movie is this thing where he's slowly figuring out what's going on, and that's the part I think that drags the most and most people are complaining about, and that they probably could have fixed by having more stuff with his outside this place life to kind of enrich him a little bit, because they pack everything into the very beginning and the very end, and the middle is all this tension stuff. But again, when the audience knows what's coming.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not tense. It's not tense just because you know what's coming. It's like
that's
Jaws.
What I'm saying.
They had to keep upping the ante on Jaws because you knew there was a fucking shark there, and that it ate people. So you have to get beyond that now. Well, you know Hyde is coming, so you got to add more to it. And
they do set some interesting things up. So there's a point where Rob sees a chess set, and you don't know at that point. Well, he doesn't know that it's Hyde that he's talking to. And Hyde says, oh, do you play chess? And he says, yeah, when you're in prison, you don't have a lot to do. So I actually learned from somebody, and he was a lot better than me, but he taught me a couple things. And Hyde's like, well, then let's play. And Jekyll is very nice and very sweet and very kind and understanding, and wants him to see his daughter and wants to actually see if he can help cure the disease and all this stuff. And then Hyde is more aggressive, but they don't make it ridiculously so. It's just that there's like a streak of, but this, I think, is a smart thing. Like the chess game. Hyde is very aggressive playing chess. But that could just be how somebody like that is they can be very kind in some ways, but be very competitive.
Yeah, I wish there'd been more of a physical transformation.
No, instead I think that they were trying to do it through personality and through certain things.
But is it enough of a personality difference? Like, honestly, I like the idea of Eddie Izzard being scary.
And this is the reason you watch it. Izzard is fantastic.
Okay.
The parts where they let her do big stuff, she does big stuff. You know what? Like when she's ranting as Hyde at the end, it's great. Like she's really. Then the two sides feel very distinct because you understand Jekyll is desperate for somebody to help her kill herself. That's why she wants Rob there. But Hyde also wanted him there as a way to get out. So both sides were using Rob for different reasons, which is interesting. But this is all in the last 10 minutes of the movie. So that middle part, so like when they play chess.
You feel like they should have brought that forward.
Yes,
more.
There should have been more stuff that really. I don't even need the physical difference. The personality differences could have been, and there are parts.
But the personality, if there's enough of a personality difference.
Yes, and the thing is, you get these brief snippets, and then they don't really they don't expand on it enough, I think, to make the middle interesting for most people. I stuck with it because I like Eddie Izzard, and the performance is very good. So, and I was like, all right, where is this going? And that to me was enough. I don't know if that's enough for most people. But I do think it's a good movie. It's just not a great movie. It's like a middle of the road Dr. Jekyll adaptation. It's not terrible, and it's not great. It's just probably pretty forgettable because there's better examples out there, which is a shame because I would actually like to see what a good movie with Eddie Izzard in this type of role would be, and maybe this will do that somewhere else. So maybe it will pay off that way. So middle of the movie's going by, and then there's a point where Rob gets beat up. And and Jekyll finds him and stitches him up, and there's a point, and that's like where he says he's like, so then they're walking through and they go in the room with a chessboard, and Nina says, were you playing some chess? And he's like, well yeah, I mean, you don't play? And she says, oh no, I never learned how. And so he's like, what? And that's where, but he's just been beating the shit out of. So there's, again, they kind of give you an out to why he's not necessarily immediately putting, because he got beat up pretty badly because his old, like the girlfriend and a couple of guys beat the shit out of him for not helping get him into the house, get them into the house to rob it. So he's been, I mean, they beat him and kick him in the head a bunch of times. Well then, yeah, I can understand why maybe he just goes, okay, I'm too fucked up to figure this out right now. So they're smart enough to somewhat offset it with that kind of thing. So you're like, okay, maybe he's not really dumb, but he's between desperation and concussion, he's not really following what's happening here. Also, the fact that in a realistic world, somebody who changes identity because they smoked a cigarette doesn't really seem like something that would happen. So then we get to the end, and Nina basically says, okay, here's what it is. My father, her father was Dr. Jekyll, the original Dr. Jekyll. And she says, my father had this problem, this condition, and I've inherited it. And I want to stop it because if I don't stop it, it will go to somebody else. Where I'm like, whoa, okay, that's new. I don't remember that at all. I mean,
wouldn't it genetically go to someone else?
Well, the movie says no. So, I don't know. Also, here's another weird thing. Maybe not weird. I shouldn't say weird. That's the wrong phrase for it. But when we see the flashback, Nina Jekyll is what appears to be a young girl. So either she transitioned very young, or I don't know, again, what all the shit in the beginning was for. It almost feels like the stuff in the beginning was for something that got cut out or was a gimmick, which just bothers me because it doesn't make any sense. I don't care about the trans angle, except you didn't do anything with it.
See, what would be interesting to me, and this is just my take on it, is if you could say that Jekyll, the original Dr. Jekyll, drank this thing and didn't realize he was changing himself genetically, and that the reason that the trans thing means is because it travels down the male side, and the fact that Nina was male means that Nina has this thing, and even though Nina has transitioned, this thing has come along.
And that's where if smoking the cigarette suddenly she became male, then I'd be like, there it is. That's what it is.
Yeah, that would have been really interesting if they kept going back and forth.
Yes,
yeah.
and that would make it make sense where you're like, that's why, is because of this.
That would have been interesting.
Nina became Nina to stop this thing, and it didn't work, and now she's screwed. Like, that's the interesting angle.
So it's the end game, out of curiosity.
Okay, so basically she says to Rob, she says, look, if you help me kill myself, because I tried it before and Jekyll stopped me. If you make sure that it doesn't get stopped, I tried to hang myself and Jekyll freed me. I'm going to now stab myself, and I need you to drive the dagger all the way in case I don't. I will leave you everything, the patents, all my money, and I have a suicide note written. You will be completely exonerated. All I need you to do is help me. And Rob, I like the fact that he struggles and says, you're asking me to commit murder. You're calling it suicide. It's murder. I'm trying not to be doing these things. I thought this was a job that would get me out of doing stuff that's going to get me put into prison. You're asking me to kill you. What happens if something goes wrong? And she says, nothing's going to go wrong. I've got it all set up. Here's the suicide note. Here's the thing saying that you're going to be able to get all the money. This is the only way it stops.
I know, but it is hilariously suspicious, isn't it?
Well, it is. Although it is, you find out it is sincere.
I'm sure it's sincere, but it is.
The problem is Hyde knows what she's doing.
Yes.
So Hyde, behind Nina's back, got secretly arranged with the brother to get the younger brother the job and then have them break in so that she could frame Rob if Rob did not allow Hyde to be transferred to him. So they break in right after Nina stabs herself. But before,
so what is the transfer thing? That's the part I don't understand.
I'm going to get to it. So I should have probably clipped it, but it's not really going to make any more sense than me explaining it because it didn't really make sense to me because they never explain it. Except that now it's transferable, like I guess debit cards or something.
Like a sexually transmitted disease.
Yeah, exactly. It's an STD now. They're going for Francis Coppola's Dracula. So the robbers show up right before he can fully stab Nina or complete it. And that gives Hyde enough time to come out and stop it. And then the Hyde basically, they go and they open the safe. There's nothing in the safe, at which point Hyde basically kills everybody, but then pulls the masks off, and it's the brother. And Rob has been trapped outside because basically Hyde knows that she needs Rob alive, so she knocks him out and puts him outside, gets him to be put outside. So he's banging on the window saying, no, you got to kill her. And the girlfriend's like, you just murdered this one. Like, it's all a fucking mess. And the chaos part of it I kind of like because nobody knows what's going on except for Hyde. And then Hyde basically murders everybody, including blowing the brother's brains onto the window in front of Rob, which is particularly vicious, which I do like that they preserve the viciousness of Hyde. Like, Hyde is fucking ruthless. I like that bit. And so Hyde's like, all right, here's what it is. This body is fucking finished. So there's one or two things that are going to happen. I can die here, and the cops are going to show up, and they're going to see that you did all this and allowed these people to break in because I've called them, and they're going to show up, and you're going to be blamed for this if they find the scene this way. Actually, I don't know if she says she called them, but she says there's some way that she's going to let them know. I don't remember. She says, so that's one scenario. The other is you let me into you, and you get everything. The patents, the money, you'll be able to save your daughter, the whole thing. All you got to do is learn to live with me. And, of course, he has no choice because he'll never see his daughter again if he goes away. And Hyde's saying, well, no. You'll still get to see your daughter, and I'll just stay in the background, and we'll share, which, of course, is bullshit. You know it is. But it's like, so it's this or prison. What do you want? And so, of course, he accepts. And so he then smokes the cigarette, and the essence gets transferred to him. And he does this body spasming stuff, which annoys me in modern films where he's jerking around a lot. It's the only time the movie does it, but it's still stupid.
I'm transferring.
Yeah, exactly. So Nina dies, and then we jump time to, I don't know, however many years later. He's being interviewed, and now he's the CEO of a pharmaceutical company, and he's a multi-billionaire, and they're questioning him about stuff, and then they say something about his daughter, and he seems to forget who his daughter is. And so, of course, what you know is now Hyde is taken over. And... and Hyde had this thing where Hyde kept saying that the way to win a chess is to always be thinking 2 steps ahead. Because when he's losing, Hyde says, yeah, their problem is you're not thinking 2 steps ahead. You always have to think two moves ahead or whatever it is. And so at the very end when they're interviewing, you know, and they're like, well, you know, how do you keep this level of success? You know, how do you do this? And he's like, oh, I'm always 3 steps ahead. And he kind of smiles at the camera and he's like, ah! He doesn't laugh like that, but it's that type of smile thing. And then the movie ends. So it's not a bad movie. It's just a movie where you sit there and go, you could have done like 3 more interesting things here, and here.
Yeah.
And the biggest shame of it.
But that's good because you're watching it going, hey, I want more of this. You could have done more with this. I would have watched more of this.
I would have done. Yeah, Eddie Izzard deserved a better version of this movie because she's really good when they let her do stuff. So, and I understand the angle.
Yeah, but you're basically dealing with the director's vision. You know,
right, that's the biggest problem. Is this feels like a limited. This feels like a very narrow scope adaptation, especially because again, when you have a performer like this, you can I understand maybe not wanting to do the physical transformation thing because, as you said, that's not what the book is. So they wanted to do subtle. Okay, there are you can do that through personality changes, and they do it. They just don't do it well enough, and they don't do it often enough. And you need something in the middle to offset the fact that this is supposed to be tension over something the audience knows. That's the problem, is Rob not knowing is not enough to equate the audience already knowing. And so you have to introduce something new. And they never did. It was just this guy stuck in a house with a weirdo, or what he perceives as a weirdo. And that's okay, but, you know, they could have had somebody else that, like a gardener, who, you know, that when weird things happen, you know, Jekyll goes, or Hyde goes to Robin and says, hey, I think the gardener's doing something. You gotta, you know, help me out with this or whatever. And then, you know, the gardener suddenly ends up dead or something where the cops show up and then Rob's getting suspicious about it. Like, there's stuff you could do, but instead it's just Rob.
Raise the tension.
Yeah. That's the weakest part, is that the middle really just feels like it's a lot of waiting for Hyde to do what Hyde is getting ready to do. Yeah. Or the backstory. They could have had a thing where Nina could have told part of the backstory in such a way that Rob doesn't know what's happening, but we as the audience, knowing the Jekyll and Hyde story, figure out where this is going. Could have said, oh, my, you know, how did you get into pharmaceuticals? Oh, well, my father was in pharmaceuticals, and actually he had a lot of problems with, you know.
The transfer thing is, I guess my problem is that they don't really give you a lot of. Do they give you any real explanation of the transfer?
No, I don't know why.
It feels very sort of last minute to set themselves up as being different.
Yeah, well, it's. I get what it is. That's, of course, this is like a Fallen type of situation where in the end, the devil won, right? That's the idea. Yeah. Hyde was actually smarter and more clever.
And that can work. You just need a little bit more footwork up front to set it up for yourself.
Yes, because I actually like the idea that both Jekyll and Hyde were using Rob for different purposes. That's actually smart because, of course, they would know what each other are doing, right? So it really was a race where there's an interesting, and maybe this is the middle of the movie, is we get some isolated moments with Jekyll and Hyde where they're like battling with each other and trying to outsmart each other, because this is kind of the Hulk Banner thing, right? Where the other one is always in the mind space or mindscape of the one who's in control. And so they are at times trying to outsmart each other, even though they both know each other, but like they're creating walls within the mind and like block off what the intentions are, shit like that.
Yeah.
And that's where you could have had, all right, you don't want to have it in overt transformation, but in the mind. Hyde is this horribly deformed thing, or this monstrous version of Nina that is like threatening and is like, you will do what I say or I will fucking destroy you, like stuff like that. And that could be, because there are parts where you hear like Nina talking to herself and she's arguing with herself and stuff like that. Okay, then let me see that. Let me see the internal version of that, where it's this battlefield where the two of them are kind of going to war with each other, and you understand why. Okay, Hyde has just enough control to make her smoke a cigarette or whatever, and then transform. But they never do that, and that's what's missing. And so then when you get to the end, there's this whole explanation that, again, takes place over the course of like 10 minutes. And it's all very, very quick, and it's all very mushed into that space. And it's like, well, why don't you stretch this out a little bit and just give us more of this?
Yeah, especially since it got slow in the middle. Why not? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, again, you have to be aware that if the audience knows the gimmick.
Honestly, to some degree, too. I mean, another way you could have changed it is if you made the situation that Nina is dying at the end, right? And Hyde comes out. Hyde knows that Hyde is dying. And Hyde basically says, and the robbers are all still in the house, right? And Hyde says to the guy, hey, if you don't accept me, they're going to kill you. Only with me can you get out of this.
Sure.
And get everything. And then he has to accept Hyde so that he has the ruthlessness to then kill everybody and get away with it.
Right.
Like create up your tension.
And this is kind of why I don't want to call this a negative review, because I did enjoy the movie. I'm glad I watched it. I enjoyed the performance.
You just wanted more.
Right, but you can see that there was that 20% missing that would make this a very good version of this story. And so it's not that anything in it. I mean, the Rob guy is miscast. He just looks way too young for the character he's playing. And I think the idea was supposed to be to project innocence, but that's not just physicality. You can do that in many ways. So a lot of people are more harsh on his performance than I am. I don't think he's bad. I think he doesn't look like what you hear this character to be.
What they want him to be.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. And at no point does he seem, I don't know, he should have been, I want to say 10 years older. Where or looked like prison had beaten him up more.
Yeah, slightly more weathered.
Yeah, he looks like a kid who just got out of college that his daddy paid for. And that's not what you want out of somebody who just got out of prison and is desperate to get a job to see their daughter. You need more gruff and grime to him than what this character had. But
Tom
that's,
Hardy.
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah, a young Tom Hardy, absolutely. Somebody who looks rougher. Again, I'm not going to blame the actor. Actor took a job and they picked him. So whatever. I'm not going to blame the guy for that. And I don't think he's bad. He just doesn't look right. Izzard is fantastic. That is probably the main selling point. It is great to see Eddie Izzard doing these different personalities when she gets to do them. And there is when you consider it in total, there is a big difference between the personalities. The problem is they space out those differences, so it's harder to appreciate it in the moment. But if you start paying attention, you see it. Like when she's Nina, she is very nice. She has this very warm, charming kind of immediate connection with this kid, and she obviously does care about him. And there's parts where he's calling her doctor, and she's like, no, don't call me doctor, call me Nina. And then there's a part where he says, all right, good night, doctor. Oh, sorry, Nina. And he's like, that's my boy. And the way she says it feels very natural and caring and warm. And then Hyde, it would have been a mistake to go 100% the opposite way, because then it's like, well, wait, something is very wrong. What did I do wrong? Instead, it's just more of this. And they do wisely have it where Nina doesn't drink, Hyde does. And so you could even explain it, because Rob doesn't necessarily notice that, but we as the audience, it's very clear we're being directed to notice that. So you can even have it where, I guess when Nina, can't handle her liquor, she's a mean drunk. There are people like that. So she has a couple of drinks and she becomes a little mean playing chess, or, a little bit short with me when I don't get her dinner fast enough or whatever. Or there's a part where Nina had asked him to go around to the house and check all the motion alarms. And she says it's really important you do that, but doesn't explain why. And of course, we know that that's probably because, or at that point, the other woman is still alive, and the other woman is tracking her movements, because the other woman knows what's going on as far as we can tell. And so when he's going around, he has to wave his arms, and it goes beep, and it makes a noise. And then he comes in, and he doesn't realize that it's Hyde. And he says, I'm almost done checking the alarms. And she says, that's what that fucking noise is that's been irritating me all morning. And he's like, oh, sorry, I'll disable it so that you can't. He's like, yeah, turn it off. I can't stand that sound. And so that's Hyde. But it makes sense that maybe noise bothers her. And so, you can play some of this stuff off. It's not unreasonable, especially if, this is his second day there. So he doesn't really know her. He just took this job. So there are people who are like that, where they get irritated at very small things, but they let big things go. I'm one of those type of people. So there's enough there that you're like, okay, this isn't I'm not having trouble believing that this could happen, but it's not the most artfully done way of telling the story. And there's pieces where you could have done more. And that's, like you said, the positive is it makes me wish there was a slightly better version of this movie out there, or that there will be at some point, because this is an interesting way to do it. I don't mind this version of the story. And I think done 20% better, it becomes very interesting. Because the thing about Jekyll and Hyde is you can tell that story in lots of different ways. There's a number of different ways to get into that.
It lends itself very well to that, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what the full story behind this is. It may come out that, hey, this guy wanted to do more ambitious things and was told, no, you can't. We don't have the budget for it, or, we just don't want to go that direction. And that could explain some things. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But for $7, I don't feel like I didn't get entertainment out of it. Once it hits streaming, if you don't want to pay $7, watch it on a streaming service. It will inevitably land on one. But I didn't feel like it was a bad purchase for $7 because I enjoyed Eddie Izzard in it. And that enough is worth $7. Plus, that to me is like, okay, I'll support the movie to hopefully support Izzard doing more stuff. So it was not terrible. I didn't go, oh, this sucked. At the end, I was just I was a little bit puzzled by a few things. But I got a good Eddie Izzard performance out of it, and that's worth $7 to me. So I would say, especially if you're a big Jekyll and Hyde enthusiast, you probably will still enjoy it. It just will not, I don't think, surpass whatever your favorite version of the story is. It's going to seem,
The Nesbitt series is all on YouTube. I just realized that.
Oh, there you go.
So if you want to watch the James Nesbitt Jekyll.
And it's
from 07, so it's a little dated.
Well, there's been like 40 versions of this story.
Oh, yeah.
So there's lots of material.
Of them, yeah. Oh, hey, listen, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, they actually turned him into a giant gorilla monster.
Boy, did they. Yeah.
Yeah, the book is better. Yeah, if you want a really great version of Hyde, read the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen books.
Yes.
Where he is fantastic.
Oh boy. Yeah. Oh boy, he has one scene in book 2 that's just the best of all time. What are you looking at? Nothing. You have to go over there. Don't forget, I can't see you. Point. He's like, oh, okay. And what happens after that? Which is a great scene all of its own.
Oh, he's fantastic in the book.
Oh, he is.
He's great. In the movies, I mean, they try to turn him into something. The movie is
the movie. And it's certainly,
and it's
speaking of lesser adaptations.
Way.
Yeah, it's just really not the book. Not really.
Yeah. I mean, didn't they try to tack that on to Tom Cruise's Mummy movie?
I think they were talking at one point about having the Invisible Man stay on as the same Invisible Man.
No. Something. The Tom Cruise Mummy movie. I think Russell Crowe is supposed to be Jekyll.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, he's Hyde. Yes, he's Jekyll and Hyde. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he is Henry Jekyll. Yes, that was the plan.
I haven't seen it. So
No, you're right. No, they do. He was supposed to be the anchor of the movies because he was running their supernatural bureau or whatever, and he was Hyde. Yeah.
Have you seen? You haven't seen it, have you?
No, God, no.
There's a part of me that wants to see it just to see what went wrong, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't need that Mummy movie. I have good Mummy movies.
Yeah, see that's a movie I'm not going to take a chance on because I already know what that is. And
is Mission Impossible Mummy Time?
I watched 2 clips of it. which is the clip where the mummy first kind of emerges, and I'm not gonna say it's the worst mummy I've ever seen.
Well, I remember reading that they wanted it to be more about the mummy, and Tom Cruise wanted it to be more about Tom Cruise.
Yeah, and that's not surprising. And then there's a action scene with him, which is Mission Impossible with sand. So okay. I don't care, and that's the thing. And the Mummy was like, okay, but the movie's not going anywhere. So it's kind of like when it came out and bombed. Well, what am I going to invest in? This is like watching a series, knowing it'll get canceled. Well, I don't care. So the Mummy's a tricky character because in some ways, you either have to have a compelling Mummy story, and you have to make it all about the Mummy, or the Mummy is a secondary character, like in the Mummy movies, the Brendan Fraser ones.
Anne Rice's book, The Mummy or Ramses the Damned. That's a great mummy,
right?
And that's a great.
They never made that.
Version.
Right? They haven't made that yet.
No, they haven't made that. No, but that is a great version of a mummy story.
See, and but in that case, it's going to be about the mummy. It's not going to be about whoever the archaeologist or whatever is. It's going to have to be about the actual character.
Yeah. So it's tough. Yeah.
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 The old one works because he's just a big, the Universal version works because he's, number one, he's played by one of the greats of classic film, and they did really good makeup with him, and so he's very scary in his movie.
Well, I thought the way they did it in the Brendan Fraser movies was really great too.
But that's a Brendan Fraser movie, not a Mummy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Mummy story is there, but it's really, it's about Rick, what's his name? Rick something.
Rick Dangervest.
Rick Dangervest. Yeah, that guy. So that's what I mean is in that movie, the Mummy is propelling the main character, but he is not really the main character, although he is interesting. So it's, I think the second movie tried to make it more about him or something like that, but I don't even remember the second one. So.
Well, before we go,
yes,
I want to bring something up that I forgot to mention earlier, but it's interesting because we're talking about versions of movies.
Sure.
Did you see that John Woo did a remake of his own movie?
The Killer?
Yeah.
Yeah, the reviews have been.
I haven't seen a trailer. I haven't seen anything. I just read an article where they talked about it, and I was like, "Oh, interesting."
It's funny you say that because I just saw something about that today. Here it is.
You mean like an American? Is it Americanized or is it a European version of it?
Let's see. I don't know. I just know forgettable remake. A fun forgettable remake. Well, wait a minute. Okay. The Pro.
It's set in Paris. That's what it is. It's set in Paris
that's what it is.
now.
Okay.
Yeah. So a review I read of it said that it felt like a John Woo movie that was being remade by like a Luc Besson or something like that.
Well, that's what this looks like.
It does, doesn't it?
Because all the accolades are for the visuals and the like fight choreography and stuff, and then the rest is there's no real meat to the characters. The villain sucks.
The only thing they really
long.
updated was Chow Yun-Fat's character is now a woman.
Right.
But part of what you like about the original is that Chow Yun-Fat has a lot of charisma. So you're like, yeah, I like Chow Yun-Fat.
I mean, this was originally supposed to... this was supposed to be... That this was originally geared to be a remake back in the 90s, right? That they were going to make an American version with Richard Gere and Denzel Washington?
No.
Yes. I don't know what the actual...
Wait, who the fuck was Richard Gere playing?
I don't know. I don't know. But this is the funniest bit about it is I remember reading that the reason it got rejected is because they thought Americans would think they were homosexuals. And I'm like, that sure tells you something, doesn't it?
What?
Yes, the concern was that they would think that Americans would see these two characters orbiting each other and think they were gay. And so they killed it off.
Wow.
And the only reason I know that is because Walter Hill, the guy behind the Warriors, was one of the people involved in it trying to get it made.
Is this why they changed the gender on Chow Yun-Fat's character?
It wouldn't shock me.
Oh, man. That's... Whereas, like, I don't get that vibe at all from The Killer. Like, I don't even...
I don't know. But I also don't know why... I guess because he wanted to make an American version and thought that maybe it would do better.
Yeah, maybe.
Well,
listen. I will say this. Time has gone on. Hold on. Time has gone on.
No, sorry. This was just a subtitle. John Woo murders his own film is the review.
Time has gone on enough, right, that there's a lot of younger people in the U.S. who aren't going to go back and watch John Woo's early movies. And this is the whole... there's people who don't want to watch any movies past 1990. That are like, Star Wars looks shitty because it's from the 70s. They don't want to watch older movies. This is a whole thing. So, what do you do with people like that? Well, if you make a new version of your movie, they might watch it. But to some degree, a movie can sometimes be culturally, a movie is sometimes a product of its time and its place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
and that's what it sounds like the problem here is it sounds like John Woo wanted to make a movie that Americans would see. The problem is it's not a better version, and so it becomes lesser.
Yeah, like Hard Boiled. The only way I would see a remake of Hard Boiled, right?
I wouldn't.
Hold on. Hear me out. The only way I would see a remake of Hard Boiled is if I found out that it was being done by the John Wick people. And that
that's not enough for me.
And that they had John Woo's blessing, and I like the cast, because then it would be a fun action movie. Will it be hard-boiled? No, because I said to you earlier, Chow Yun-Fat has a certain type of charisma that really makes his characters glow.
But it's more than that, because the way Hong Kong movies are made have a different sensibility, and I just don't.
Oh, it's a different culture.
Yeah, that's what
It's
I
like
mean.
better. It's like Better Tomorrow 2. That movie
Right.
is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous. But it works.
No, that's
And-
but so
and
that's the
you-
thing is, if you don't remake it in the same way, in which case if you do,
can't-
what's the
you can't
point?
remake it. Yeah.
Then
Well, listen,
it's always going to be lesser.
I don't know why John Woo, in the end, I don't know why he felt the need to remake his own movie rather than try to make a new movie. But maybe he didn't have any story ideas. Yeah, well, there you go, yeah.
That's my best guess.
You know what? Before the show, I feel terrible at this because we had this whole conversation about Tim Burton before the show.
Yeah, we did.
We had this whole conversation about Tim Burton about the show and about how Tim Burton sometimes his problem is that Tim Burton is just so Tim Burton that it gets in his way.
I haven't had much sound effects this show. I have to do something.
I know. And I think that with John Woo, maybe that's the thing, is that John Woo is a great action director. But story-wise, I mean, it's a little light. So it's like maybe he just thought, fuck it, I'll just use my old script and just have it updated. You know?
And from what I've read, they've tried to remake this a bunch of times. Maybe it finally got to the point where somebody said to him, you know what, we're going to make this one way, or the kind of the Matrix thing. Remember, that was the thing with the fourth Matrix movie, is the in-universe thing. There's a point where they say, well, we're going to make it with or without the original people. So whatever, if they don't want to get paid, who cares? So maybe somebody said to him, we're making this thing. Do you want to be part of it or not? You'll get paid if you are. And he's like, well, if you're going to make it anyway, I might as well put something into it. And that's
have some fun with it, yeah.
I'm not going to blame him for that. Get paid if somebody's going to be ripping off your work anyway.
But yeah, the
Might as well be
reviews
you.
the reviews aren't kind.
The reviews are very middle of the road. I haven't read anybody who says that it's really terrible. What they say is, why would you remake this because it's no better? It's just the same thing but lesser. That's not the same thing as a bad movie. It's more of people saying the original is considered an action classic. It is one of your defining movies. Why would you do this to your own work?
Yeah, I mean, really, those three, Hard Boiled, Better Tomorrow 2, and The Killer, are like his penultimate movies.
Yeah, and so I think that's more of what some of these reactions are, is I don't understand why this is being made. It doesn't make sense, as opposed to this is unwatchable. I'm not seeing that. They're saying, if you want John Woo stuff, you're going to get it. The action is there. Yeah. Okay, well, for a lot of people...
why not just go watch The Killer?
Well,
the original.
But in fairness, this is English language, and guess what?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, I have to read? Ah!
You know what? Listen, I have wanted to show my kids Shaolin Soccer for the longest time, but I cannot get them to watch a subtitled movie. Now you know, they're younger. But I cannot find a dubbed version, and every time I think I've found a dubbed version, it ends up being subtitled.
Yeah, well, and that is a real problem, is that for a lot of people...
Oh, yeah, you know what? Both of us know somebody who will not watch subtitled movies.
That's what I'm saying. So so maybe it was simple as somebody in an executive suite saying, oh, you want to make your classic movies in subtitles? Well, I know what the audience reaction is going to be.
Oh, my God!
And they won't watch it.
You're
so
just getting them all out right
I am at the end, man. I'm just, it's soundboard time, goddammit. So fuck it. But no, seriously.
Like, I just
right.
didn't get to do it a lot.
I have said to people, oh, there's a really wonderful movie. And the question they ask is, because they know me, is it subtitled?
Yeah.
Yes.
Really?
They're like, I'm not going to watch it.
Yeah. And the thing is, I want to get my kids into subtitled movies, but they're still young enough that they're like,
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Whereas, I mean, a subtitled movie does not get in the way to me, as long as the subtitles are good.
Right. No, well, you have to tell me.
Because you can get really bad subtitles. Where you're like, what did he just say?
Listen, you can get bad at anything.
Yeah.
I bet that woman is here. I'm sure you're still horny, suffering.
Oh, God.
Show me your dick. Come on, show me your dick.
So look, there's bad all over, even in English speaking, right? It happens. So.
Yeah. Well, you know what? At some point or another, if I have a night where I'm not doing anything, maybe I'll throw it on The Killer, the remake Killer, the update Killer, whatever. and see how bad it is.
I'll let you do it. I thought the same thing, and I'm like, you know what? No.
No, I'm not gonna listen. I'm not gonna go out of my way here. I'm not gonna pay for it. I'll tell you that right there.
I'm not even gonna casually. I don't think I want to put it casually on because I think the original is so good, and I don't mind subtitles, and I really do feel like this is probably made purely for people who can't put up with subtitles. And by the way, just to be clear, if you don't like subtitles, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you. I'm saying that because I don't mind them, I will stick with the superior version because I know it is superior. I knew that before I ever saw a review. Yeah. I knew it was the superior version. The same way that, like you said, oh, the John Wick people do Hard-Boiled? Wonderful. Let other people watch it. I know what movie I'm watching. I don't need a new version of it. It's timeless. It exists perfectly within its time and space. And I can go back, fortunately, and revisit that because we do have time travel in a way where we can watch things from the past over and over. And the nice part is they get better looking every time I see them. So, because I just keep fucking buying the newer versions of them. So they always do look better.
But the sad thing is the closest thing we have to an American Hong Kong movie is The Replacement Killers.
Yes.
Isn't that right? Isn't that's got to be the only American movie that is close to a Hong Kong shooter?
Okay. In fairness, Face Off is a Hong Kong American film. It just doesn't have Asian actors in it. But in spirit, it is every bit as silly and over the top and ridiculous as any other Hong Kong film. It's just not with any Asian actors. The thing that is the fucking crime. And by the way, Face Off is John Woo, so it makes sense. Yeah. But the crime of Replacement Killers is if it had done better, Chow Yun-Fat would be a household name. That's the thing that pisses me off the most.
And you said that's the thing is they cut out the whole love interest thing.
Because you can't have an Asian guy and a white girl dating, I guess.
How racist is that shit? And what year was that movie?
97?
Yeah,
pretty sure.
There you go.
Because that was when the Crystal Method album came out. Because I was like, "Whoa, this music's great." 98. I was 1 year old.
98. Yeah, 98. 98. And the line was, "You can't have an Asian guy with a white girl."
Yeah. That's it's.
Yeah, and if you think about it, what American movies did we get with Chow Yun-Fat other than like Pirates of the Caribbean 2? Are there any other? You have Crouching Tiger's not an American movie.
No, I was going to say American movie. Yeah. No, then he did that like Bulletproof Monk thing.
Oh, yeah.
But that didn't do well. Nothing. They couldn't figure it out. And I honestly, I do blame the Replacement Killers for that because I think people looked at that and said, no, you know what? We can't have an Asian lead.
They refused to have him be a leading man, even though Chow Yun-Fat is a leading man.
Yeah. No, you know? I'm looking through it, and there's nothing here that I don't think most of this is even American stuff, from what I can tell.
Yeah,
and that sucks because
we don't like to import our leading men unless they come from England.
I mean, I get so fucking irritated about Replacement Killers. I really do because there's so many good people in it.
But
Jürgen Prochnow, Michael Rooker, Marissa Tomei.
You get irritated because it's such a good movie.
Because it didn't do better.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think the problem is it's not memorable enough. Also, I think they made a mistake. His English is relatively broken.
Yeah.
Which I think they would have been better off having her speaking Chinese. But there you have to have subtitles. So, nope, can't have subtitles. Can't fucking read. So
well, it's like Ken Watanabe. I can't remember. I don't know if he still does it, but I know that early on, he had to learn his dialogue phonetically.
Oh yeah.
Because he didn't quite speak enough English.
Well, I think they said the lead guy in The Acolyte, the Asian actor from Squid Game, doesn't speak any English, and yet they said you'd never know it because he learned it so well and figured out what to accentuate.
And that show was fucking canceled.
No, there's no shock there. But yeah,
didn't that have a cliffhanger ending as well?
Of course it did. Fuck it, whatever. And by the here's another thing that irritates me about The Acolyte getting canceled. It had what should be one of the greatest concepts. I'm sorry, I'll just say it for me. Lesbians, fucking force witches. I'm in. I'll take a whole show of that. But
do they have to be? Are they lesbians?
They are.
No idea.
I believe I didn't watch the show, but from what I understand, yes, they are supposed to be lesbian force witches, which I am okay with. Are you kidding?
You
yes,
know what?
all right.
I've probably seen a porno of that, but anyway, go on.
Well, and there's the other thing. They cut off that whole revenue stream, didn't they? You know what they could have done with that?
What, Disney pornography?
The
Yeah.
Assolite. I'm writing the porn titles for you,
God,
right?
The Assolite. The Assolot. Jesus Christ. See, and now I don't know if I'm going to watch that show. I you know what? I probably will, only because it's in the right age group for my kids, and it's Disney material, and they like Disney material. So, like, I'll probably watch it with them.
Oh, I think they'll probably have a very good time with it.
Yeah, but
because they're not going to be
read,
thinking about the irritating stuff about it that we are. So.
Yeah, but I have read that it's a cliffhanger ending. And,
oh no, it is.
Apparently,
It's a massive.
Apparently, it was expensive as fuck too.
Well,
so yeah,
there's a whole discussion to be about Disney spending too much money on all of its stuff, and then wondering why it doesn't make $4 billion. So.
Well, yeah, and actually, what's amusing to me is, and I have read this in several places, so I think that it is true, is that Ryan Reynolds has said that when they made the last Deadpool movie, Disney was willing to give them so much money, and director and Ryan Reynolds said, no, we want less money. And the reason is because they felt that they worked better under a constrained environment rather than having all the money in the world that you then have to make back.
Well, and while he may not have said this, it is almost universally true that the more money you're given, the more the studio starts imposing their will on you. And when you start saying, well, if we do it for $10 million less, I want to keep this in, they'll say, okay.
Yeah, well, and Kevin Smith said that. Kevin Smith said, you know, I make lower budget movies because if I make this much, I'm a success. Whereas if I make a big budget movie, yeah.
They're willing to accept risks when they know you don't have to make as much back. So that becomes more of a risk tolerance. They're like, okay, well, you know, if you only have to make $10 million instead of $100, then if you want to put in a joke about pegging, go for it.
Yeah, and then that movie made a fuck ton. Yeah.
Yeah, I find it very funny that they said the one thing they couldn't joke about was cocaine usage. Of everything that is in that movie, they were told.
But don't they joke about cocaine?
Well, they can't say the word cocaine. They use other euphemisms.
Honestly,
they can't
it's
explicitly
it's
say.
better that they don't say cocaine.
But you know that reeks of somebody in a suit somewhere saying, I don't want my daughter to ever see a movie I've made that has the word cocaine in it. I don't care whether they're talking about anal sex all day.
So instead you're like,
no
cocaine.
Instead
you're like, hey, you want to build a snowman? I think that's worse. I think euphemisms are worse.
No, I agree,
they
but
conjure such perfect imagery.
That is the very emblematic tone of a studio note by an executive who is clueless about the movie being made. It's just like, the only thing I'm going to tell you is you can't say cocaine in it. Has no idea what the rest of the movie is.
Oh, well,
just wants to make sure.
A lot more than that. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, on that note.
Well, the reviews were done around the 2-hour mark, so we've just completely fucking wasted about 40 minutes here. So there you go.
Oh, geez, look at that.
Yeah.
another wasted show.
Even when I was like, oh, don't worry, we won't go that far because my reviews are short. Fuck that. Nope. Whatever.
I meant to bring up the killer thing earlier, and I actually forgot.
That's fine. Let me rant about replacement killers again, which I think I did at least 1.5 where I bitched about that.
Well, listen, you know what? If you want to have a throwback review of stuff that we've watched in the past, anyone who hasn't seen the Replacement Killers, you should see the Replacement Killers.
Actually,
and anyone who hasn't seen the James, yeah. Oh, he's seen it.
No, look.
Anyway,
don't say that.
Anyone who hasn't seen the James Nesbitt Jekyll, and then you're in the mood for more Jekyll and Hyde, that's all on YouTube. You can watch it for free.
By the way, don't say he's seen it, because one of the movies I was sure he'd seen, and remember you were shocked.
You went on about that movie so much to him.
What, the Replacement Killers?
Yeah.
No. There was a movie that we reviewed that he'd never seen.
What? One movie?
One of the ones we reviewed, he hadn't seen it. What the hell was it?
Predator 2?
Near Dark. I don't think he'd seen Near Dark.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. But you know what? Near Dark is a weird movie. There's a lot of people who missed that for some reason.
Well, listen, The Replacement Killers came in and didn't get good reviews. Don't pretend it did well.
I saw it.
So did I. But what I'm saying is, it's very possible he didn't see it, not because it wasn't all over the place, but because he might not have been into it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll find out.
The thing now is that the amount of movies that are getting pumped out in every direction now, it's very easy to miss tons of shit.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah.
tons and tons of shit just goes flying by. And
Also-
yet, my wife mentions, or you mentioned movie from the 90s. I love it when you come to me with movies from like the 90s or the 80s, and you're like, hey, have you heard of this movie? And I'll be like, I saw that.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah.
And then I have to remember, and I'm like, oh, shit. I saw that when I was way too young. The amount of movies that I have seen when I was way too young is staggering. Yes, my wife always likes to be like, why did your parents let you see this? I'm like, I don't really think they knew I was watching it.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, here's something else. Titanic came out right around when it did. So see,
Oh, you know,
you sit there and think.
Okay,
but-
I still haven't seen Titanic.
Oh, I saw Titanic. I saw Titanic in the theaters.
Oh, you poor bastard.
Well, I fell
I
asleep
got-
for about the middle, like 40
Here's the
minutes
thing.
of it.
My whole thing with that movie was no one could keep the fact that the guy dies at the end. Like, that came out right away.
Sure.
And I was kind of like, it's a movie where I know everybody's fucked. I was like, I
And
just don't think I can...
that's the miserable part about the end of it is it's just fucking literal liquid misery. It's just everybody who you've met and been with, because that movie's like 3 hours long.
Yeah,
so there's
you're like,
characters.
now you've grown to like them. They all die.
Yeah, there's all these characters that are actually likable, and you know who they are, and they're fucking drowning, and everybody's panicking, and Billy Zane's a dick, and Rose is Jack is low class, and nobody loves him, but he got to see Kate Winslet naked, so I guess that offsets. Oh, he's dead. Fuck. It's like that's the movie. It's not fun. Except when the ship breaks in half, but that's not even fun because a bunch of people died. It's like it's not like Terminator 2 where
Listen,
the
if I'm
building
gonna watch
blows
a movie
up.
where everybody ends up underwater by James Cameron, it'll be The Abyss.
The Abyss. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And here's the thing: that man can make as many underwater movies as he wants, but it ain't gonna be better than The Abyss.
No.
Like, I know that now he wants to make an underwater Avatar movie because he's gonna make The Abyss Avatar edition. But Abyss is like, in fact, man, in my world, Abyss is almost the best movie that James Cameron's ever made. Like, I know T2 is great and it's a lot of fun.
The best
I know it's,
movie
it's
he's
a
ever
lot.
better
It's
than
a lot of
Aliens?
fun.
Really?
I really fucking like Abyss. I saw
All right,
Abyss
well,
in theaters
I'm
like
not-
5 or 6
not
times, and I love
necessarily
Aliens.
saying you're wrong. I'm just shocked.
The other thing
it's
is,
not
I
Aliens.
love Aliens and I love T2, but there's something about that movie, Abyss, that the
Yeah,
aliens
listen,
are good.
It's a great movie.
I think
You
that's what it
can't
is
argue.
that the aliens are good,
All right.
and you're not, and it doesn't end in massive violence necessarily. You know what I mean? Like, what's great about Aliens is a fun movie. T2 is a fun movie, but Abyss is about basically the impossible, the unexplored, trumping human violence. Especially if you see the fucking
The director's cut.
the director's cut,
Sure.
where the aliens are basically like, "Hey, cut this shit out,"
Yeah.
right? I mean, I love that. I love that about that movie. And it's
So,
one of
I'm
Michael
not-
Baine's great performances.
Yeah.
Him and his mustache.
Sure.
Ed Harris is fucking astounding.
Best scene with a chain.
Yeah.
Clink, 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 clink.
Yeah, man, and the underwater
Liquid
chase
stuff?
sequence is fucking
Oh,
amazing.
the
I mean,
implosion. Oh god.
yeah, I mean they filmed and just it's one of those movies that you can watch a documentary about it and it's almost as interesting as the movie or more. Actually, now that I think about it,
Sure.
because they actually filmed the whole thing in like a giant underwater like tank.
No, I'm not
Yeah.
arguing that it's a terrible choice. I'm just surprised not Aliens because for me it's Aliens.
I love
I
Aliens, and if I say to you what's the funnest movie for me to watch of his, like the one to watch that I've probably seen the most at this point, it is probably Aliens.
Well, okay,
but-
you know what? When you say it like that, what is his best made movie? It is knowing everything about. Yeah, it would be The Abyss because of everything that went into it. So I'll agree with you on that. The
You know,
movie
like-
I want to watch of most.
Aliens is
often
the most
is Aliens.
fun. Abyss is, I think, the best.
Terminator 2
and
is a close
Terminator
one,
2
too.
is just a fucking absolute party.
Yeah, it's such a good time.
You know what I mean?
It's such
Like
a good
that
time.
is yeah. So and I'm trying to think of like other movies. What are Cameron's other movies? Oh,
Well, the
real quick.
Terminator. Well, after really, besides that, it's the Avatar stuff, and Titanic.
Oh my god.
It really he actually hasn't made. I mean, he's made 18 total things or 17
Hold on.
total things.
I'm just looking real
I mean,
quick.
unless you're going to count Piranha 2.
Oh yeah, Piranha 2. Okay, let's see. So Seal. Okay,
a lot of
True
stuff in there
Lies. That's the other
Oh,
one.
yeah,
True
True
Lies
Lies,
is a ton of fun. So
Yeah,
True
that's
Lies is a ton of fun. The Abyss is awesome.
Yeah.
What the? Hold on.
He's helped on stuff that he's not really
Yeah,
directed
hold on.
films.
I'm cutting out writing and directing.
Yeah,
stuff
and they'll
here.
look at like the Rambo video game
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
You know.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so director. Let's see. Previous. Let's see. So. Yeah, Piranha 2. Aliens is awesome. Abyss is fantastic. T2 is good. True Lies is a really fun. But you're right, actually. You're right. Because Titanic was,
Yeah.
I never watched Dark Angel. And,
I think I watched the pilot of that, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, and this is why it's so sad to me that everything is fucking Avatar now. Because it's like, man, Cameron, I know you're. Well, maybe you're not. Remember we read that line about how science fiction is difficult or something like that now?
Yeah.
Maybe that's his issue. He just can't think of something
I guess.
else. But
I mean, whatever. People should do what they want to do.
and listen, I think Avatar is a good-looking movie, but I mean it's Dances with Wolves.
Let me put it like this. I'm happy that I can ignore the Avatar films knowing we have The Abyss, Aliens, and Terminator 2, as opposed to him only doing Avatar films and we hearing about, oh yeah, I had written a script for Terminator 2. It would have been a really good action film, but honestly, I just got so in love with water that I never bothered.
I think that if you took a director and you took the best 3 movies, if they've got 3 really legendary movies, it's fantastic.
And most
like
of the people we really like do.
Yeah, and there's things like
Ridley
Cameron
Scott,
has
James Cameron, John Carpenter.
was it William Friedkin? He's the one that did. Hold on.
Oh, The Exorcist. Oh no, sorry, French Connection. No wait.
Yeah,
he did do Exorcist.
But
Didn't he?
Hold on 1 second. He did.
And he did Sorcerer.
Hold on.
Am I thinking of the right fucking? Yes, because he's the guy who hates Al Pacino. Yeah, that's him. Live and Die in L.A., Exorcist, French Connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did The Hunted. I like The Hunted. It's not one of his better movies, but I really like.
Oh, sorry, I'm thinking of the wrong Hunted. I like the other Hunted better.
Oh yeah. But
I like the Lambert Hunted better.
But yeah, right off the top of your head, there's like 3 movies that you were thinking of.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
like
and you're
Sorcerer and I like Wages of Sin, which is what it's based on.
Yeah.
I like them both.
And
I
that's
think
the
they're both
thing,
really interesting movies.
If a director can make 3 really great movies, that's fantastic.
Oh, and I like Blue Chips too, even though I recognize it's not one of his top tier films. But I always
That's
like
the
Blue
Nick
Chips.
Nolte one, right?
Yeah, where he's the basketball guy. Yeah. Guillermo del Toro, David Lynch, like all the big people that we really like have at least 3 films, if not more.
Oh yeah, 3
They all
really good films. Yeah.
George Lucas.
The guy who did Predator. He also did.
John McTiernan. Fuck you.
Yeah,
John McTiernan's got a
he
lot
did
of good movies.
13th
Die
Warrior,
Hard.
Die Hard.
No,
I know, but just 3 that come right to your mind.
Oh sure.
That were great.
Oh no. Yeah.
You know?
No, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're just pushing the clock. I realize.
Yeah. No, we are. Even though we was like, it's not gonna be a 3-hour show. Sorry about the
Now we're just because we're just wandering off now, and I think it's too easy to just wander off.
Boy,
All right, so then I go ahead.
forehead diarrhea, folks. We had it right at the beginning. All right, well, go find 3 movies from a director that you absolutely love and watch them all in order. That's a good way to spend your weekend. But if you do it some other way, enjoy yourself.
Or you know
We'll
what? Find a list.
Fuck you! I'm trying to end it.
Movies.
Stop.
Well, I know, but you're just saying a thing, and I'm adding to it that you could find a director and go watch their 3 movies that you haven't seen before. Is that you shutting AI Lando down?
Well, it was the more you know sound, so actually it was fitting. I played it appropriately.
You know what? You should have a dialogue thing where someone's talking and it's just like.
Well, what I need to do is get the buzzer sound from say Family Feud or something like and just that, and then just close the show. But in lieu of that, I'll just say we'll talk again next week. All right, bye. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.